IRGC now has kids running machine guns at checkpoints. Check that out. That is a kid running a machine gun at a checkpoint. So that goes to show you who we're dealing with the IRGC now in control of Iraq, with complete and total control. The worst people in the country now have the most influence. So as of me filming this, Iran has unleashed another massive attack. We got anti-aircraft fire all over the place in Iran. We do not know what they're shooting at. We do not know who's responsible for the aircraft in their area. Lebanon continues to get pounded. This is a very dangerous situation, and we have aircraft on the move at this hour, going to a variety of different places. So that is where we're at. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, guys, I will continue to monitor the situation. Thank you very much for watching.
We're on the news or something. Some updated news.
So we've now just had our second.
Search on the Strait of Hormuz.
Strait of Hormuz.
What is the? ¿Quién está con control? This one.
In their area, Israel is definitely the aggressor. So, with that being said, stay prayed up. Leave your comments below. I want to know what you guys think. Go ahead and comment below. Let me know what you think on the situation. Let me know if you think that China's going to get involved or not. Let me know. I've been reading, and there's a lot of good comments on these videos. A lot of good comments. So leave your comments below. Like and subscribe. And stay prayed up. Take care of your family and keep God first. And until next time, it's your homie, Mr. Criminal, and I'm out.
That was quick. Fucking flipping ass with the criminal.
Fox News alert, the president says if we don't make a deal, it's going to be very painful for Iran. Their negotiation tactic right now, stall.
They'll try to delay and drag this out because they're really masters at this.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been at this for years, and they're excellent at it. And they'll drag it out because they want more pressure on the president not to start again, because oil prices are down, markets up, people are feeling better, political pressure's off him, and the idea of going back in, would be a very unpopular start, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think he has to do exactly that, but hold to a 2-week deadline.
Iran can't outgun us, so they're trying to outlast us. America's patience is running thin, and so is Iran's grace period. They promise to completely open up the strait, and all we're getting is a trickle. In 48 hours, only 10 ships have crossed, only 2 of them oil tankers. Before the war, hundreds sailed through every day. And now they want to set up a little toll booth. At first, Trump wanted to cut, but now he's soured on the concept. He said, quote, they better not be, and if they are, they better stop now. Bridge and Power Plant Day made the gay Ayatollah wake up from his coma. He told his ministers to get a deal done and open the strait. So why isn't the strait open? That's what the president wants to know. Quote, Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That's not the agreement we have. The Iranian ministers who kind of deal with Trump, how do they even tell the toll booth operators on Karg Island there's a truce? No one has cell phones. They're hiding in caves. There's no internet. It's like 10 years after World War II was over. We were still finding Japanese soldiers armed to the teeth on a jungle island. The Ayatollah is just a cardboard puppet. The guard runs the country. The mullahs are canceled. It's a military dictatorship now. And in order for the generals to survive, they need currency. And they found a way to make money off the strait. Oil kickbacks and toll fees. We knocked out their factories, steel and chemical plants. There's mass unemployment. No one's getting paid, and inflation's 10 times worse than Biden's. They lost the war, so manipulating Hormuz is their last resort. It makes America mad, and it makes them money. The gay Ayatollah and his ministers aren't in charge. They don't have the clout to negotiate with Vance. The IRGC wants to fight to the death. They didn't even want a ceasefire. They want to rule from a bunker, meet their 72 virgins. They've been trying to derail talks. They even launched drones at the Saudis. Former CIA Director General David Petraeus says it's going to take some savvy negotiating to get their finger off the trigger and crack open that strait.
It's going to take some real diplomatic skill to get it back to what it was, which is an international waterway, not controlled by any country and open to all without tariffs and tolls. Iran clearly is able right now, because of its ability to disrupt freedom of navigation. It has some real strategic power out of this, and it's using that, of course, to influence developments in Lebanon and try to protect its proxy there, Hezbollah, to the extent that it can.
The Iranians claim they closed the strait because Israel kept going ham on Hezbollah. Trump got Netanyahu to lay off the proxies for now, so we're about to see if the regime's playing games. The president says he's very optimistic that a peace deal will happen, and that Iran's leaders talk much differently when they're at a meeting than they do to the press. They're much more reasonable, he said. And the Europeans better man up. The head of NATO is in D.C. He met with the president last night, and Daddy told him he's disappointed. And within days, expects the Europeans to fire up the Hormuz coalition. NATO says they're working on it.
Each country is not looking for what they can do to continue to do this, to make sure that it's set up for good faith.
Brits, begrudgingly,
They
are
were
saying
helping
they'll
them
take the
with it,
lead.
so.
This war was our war, but like the way to protect the UK, it's already having an impact on the UK, and it's very important we get the Strait of Hormuz open. There's a lot of work to do there. The British have 2 carriers sitting on the side of the seashore in South England. One's in for repairs, the other's just docked. It's like owning a Lamborghini, but you're afraid to drive it. Same thing with the French.
Yeah,
They
why?
have a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the Charles de Gaulle. It's just hanging around the Mediterranean. It could be in the Gulf in just a few days. We saved the French do mop-up duty in the Strait with Iran's entire navy at the bottom of the sea. And Italy might be game 2. They say, we'll see. Daddy's got to get the kids to move out. They can't live in the basement forever. But if they do, they got to pay rent.
Do you still consider him daddy after yesterday?
Well, on the daddy thing, this is a language problem. In Dutch, you would say, hey, the translation of your father is daddy, and I would say, hey, yeah, sometimes daddy has to be angry. So I was not calling him my daddy, but I was saying, but of course, daddy has also a special connotation, and I now have to live with it the rest of my life.
Europe gets most of its oil from the Strait, so if it doesn't open soon, they might have to ration fuel. Same thing with the Asians. I love our allies, but they're on welfare, and it's ruined their work ethic. NATO admits we won the war, but they won't help win the peace.
Is the world safer today than it was before the war was started?
Absolutely, because, and this is thanks to President Trump's leadership, the degrading these capabilities is really very important for your and my safety here in the US, in Europe, in the Middle East.
Trump's going to China in a month. If the strait's closed when he lands in Beijing, that's no bueno. China's going to use that leverage against us. If the strait can't be opened diplomatically, then it's time for raging power plant day. The regime's completely defenseless. In less than 40 days, we used just 10% of our combat power to dismantle one of the largest militaries in the world. In 2 weeks, we'll be rested, replenished, and rearmed. When the ceasefire's over in 12 days, the USS Ford, USS Boxer, and USS Bush will be in theater. CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper couldn't be more proud of what these men have accomplished.
Iran has suffered a generational military defeat. The United States and Israel systematically destroyed Iran's ability to conduct large-scale military operations for years to come. Iran's conventional military capability, built over 40 years at the cost of billions of dollars, has been eliminated. So to all our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, guardians, and Coast Guardsmen, operating forward, you represent the strongest, most lethal military the world has ever known.
When the Trump team meets with the Iranian delegation in Pakistan on Saturday, they should listen to the Iranian BS, then just walk out of the meeting. And the president should say, Iran still hasn't opened the strait, they're screwing around, ceasefire's off. Market panics, oil jumps, and the whole world will see the Iranians as unreasonable and causing an economic crisis. The whole world will turn against them, and they'll be in a worse position than before. And they'll be under so much pressure, they'll have to open up the strait. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One. Jim Hansen, former U.S. Army Special Forces and the chief strategist for the Middle East Forum. All right, Jim, how confident are you that the U.S. could pull off some sort of uranium extraction under enemy fire?
We can absolutely do it. And I think I want to tell all the IRGC leadership now who's watching this show that don't doubt President Trump has the resolve to make that call. You know, and I mean, at some level, I have a wish to see. I want the choppers coming in, hitting the beach, you know, blaring Ride of the Valkyrie, Ghost of Robert Duvall in the lead helicopter, and the discombobulator blazing their way to knock everybody out of the way. The problem is from the beach to the places we have to go is almost 500 miles. And that's a heck of a logistical nightmare. It's not quite as simple. It can be done, and we have the capabilities and the people to do it. But I think everyone should be cognizant that's a heavy lift.
It is. And, you know, you don't want to trivialize it. Like, I'll go and take the uranium, but what kind of close air support, consistent close air support, would an operation like that require deep inside Iranian airspace?
Yeah, I would be less worried that they would send like a reaction force to try and, you know, okay, we go, we surround it, we drop the 82nd in, they surround the compound, you know, the SEALs, Delta, whoever, the Rangers, everybody go in and start, you know, searching the compound. But they're not going to send a force to try and fight that because they know we have air supremacy. We'll kill anybody who comes. But they can send drone swarms and all of that. And what those guys won't have a lot of is air defense. So that's the big weakness is it's hard to defend against a bunch of drones. And we might have to try and find a way to bring in some air defense with them to keep it clear long enough to actually do what needs to be done, find that stuff, get it on a bird, and get out of there.
So is there a risk for fallout? I'm not a nuclear physicist, but if the Iranians just start, I don't know, just lobbing everything they have at these two remaining nuke sites, is that crazy town?
Well, as Secretary Rubio said, this is an apocalyptic death cult. You know, the 12er shit.
Let me know where you guys watching from.
Event to bring back their Mahdi and rule the world. So you can't say they won't do it. And if they somehow manage to hit or do that, you've got the equivalent of a dirty bomb. All our guys would be in deep trouble. But again, you know, that's a nightmare scenario if it happens. Better case scenario is we get a tip. You know, and either Mossad or the CIA turn somebody or buy somebody and they tell us exactly where it is and maybe even bring it out for us. You know, there's a lot of ways this could go. I think there are better ways in a raid, but no one should ever doubt that if it comes down to it, President Trump's going to get that job done.
Yeah, I think the raid, obviously, you're right, is the last option. What have you heard about the discombobulator? Because I hadn't heard anything in that much detail since Alfred said it made everybody yak.
You know, there's a lot of directed energy weapons that we've had for a while. We've tested them. There's some that can make you feel heat. You know, there's sound waves that can make you just freak out and discombobulate you. What exactly they're using and what was used in Venezuela has not been publicly announced. It's just one of those things that we have that makes it a big advantage because when you are going into a place where the enemy knows where you're coming, you don't want to lead with your face. You know, that's a cardinal rule of door operations. Have something in front of you for that. So that's why you throw flashbangs in a room. This is a directed energy flashbang to blow everybody's mind and hopefully get our guys in and safely back out.
Yeah, I learned that in boxing. Never lead with your face. The Iranian regime, what's left of it, do you think they are capable of withstanding another 2-week aerial pounding, or will it take some sort of lightning fast ground operation on cargo?
I've seen this. Straight from him. He's
So when two go through, it's obviously a very tightly controlled situation. So with that, we bring in retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, former assistant to the president and special presidential envoy for Ukraine, now co-chair of American Security at the America First Policy Institute. General, always good to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here. So this statement from the leader in Iran says that they are resolute. They will take control of the Strait of Hormuz. This is obviously the strongest quiver in their pack at this point, and they are determined to make the most of it. What do you say to that?
Yeah, thanks, Martha. Good to be with you. Look, this guy doesn't know who he's dealing with. I mean, when you look at Hormuz, he's like he's still alive. And you look at Kalima, who's his parliamentary leader, or Rachi, who is his foreign minister, they don't get President Trump. He's within just seconds of taking their economic lifeline.
Leader in Iran says that they are resolute. They will take control of the Strait of Hormuz. This is obviously the strongest quiver in their pack at this point, and they are determined to make the most of it. What do you say to that?
Yeah, thanks, Martha. Good to be with you. Look, this guy doesn't know who he's dealing with. I mean, when you look at Khamenei, he's like he's still alive. And you look at Kalima, who's his parliamentary leader, or Rachi, who is his foreign minister, they don't get President Trump. He's within just seconds of taking their economic lifeline, of seizing Cargill or seizing those islands in the Strait. You notice that the display you just had, they have rerouted the ships to go through the Strait. They go by a place called North Island. That's that little island that's just south of there. That's their command and control facility, not Daesham Island, the big one. We don't need to go to downtown Tehran. All we need to do is tell them when we go to negotiations, we're going to let you stay alive. That's the best you can hope for. But you talk about taking revenge. When the president says we're going to finish you with civilization, he means it. We've got the capability, the capacity, of Dan Kane and the Secretary of War with Hexen. But we can do that, and we've proven it over the last 30 plus days that there's no way they can stop us. So when we go into these negotiations, this is not equals talking to equals at all. This is the United States of America going in and saying, this is the way it's going to be. History has proven that we're the dominant power. We can do that in the future. We're going to make sure you understand that. If you want to play games with us, in 2 weeks, you're going to be lucky to survive as a regime at all. And we can do that. We can follow with what we want to do. We can demand anything we want right now. This is something that, when I think I have to refer to history, but I go back to the Romans and the Carthaginians. But they fought 3 Punic Wars. The third time the Romans said, I'm fed up with these guys. They went to Carthage, they seized the city, they took the city, they burned it to the ground, and they took 50,000 prisoners. We're about at that stage right now that we can finish this job if we want. Trump doesn't, and they don't understand President Trump. They're dealing with a wrong
Let me ask you this
They
about
understand what he can do.
the personnel, because obviously some of these people were left alive intentionally, because we went through the ranks, our U.S. military, and removed Khamenei, the leader, only the second Ayatollah in the 47-year period that this theocratic leadership has been in charge in Iran. And the president said the other day, well, these people that we're dealing with are more amenable. They're better. This crew of leaders, we can work with them. We think that doesn't sound like it lines up with what you're saying.
Well, I don't think we can. When you look at Kaleba or Arachi, these are both the Revolutionary Guards people. They came out of the ROGC. They're not normal people. I think the only normal person you have is Sheshkian, who's the president. But the rest of them are revolutionary leaders. They've been fighting for 40 years against the United States. And you got a picture up there with Brahidi. He's the same one. He runs the ROGC right now, but he's an old revolutionary too. So you're dealing with people who are steeped in believing the United States is the great state. And we need to go in there and realize this is not a business deal. This is war. And we're settling a war. We are the victors. And we're going to come in like we are the victors.
Well, I hear you.
A peace treaty.
I hear you. The
Missouri,
signal that they're sending us is that they believe that they have survived, and that's the bar for them. Survival of the leadership, survival of IRGC. This is David Cloud in the Wall Street Journal today, the Dubai-based correspondent. He says Tehran emerged from 38 days of war against the United States and Israel, having won not only its primary goal, its own survival, but also two potential strategic gains: control of the Strait of Hormuz and a newly established deterrence against large-scale attacks by its long-time adversaries. What do you say to that?
I think it's a real misread. I think he's making a mistake and he wrote it wrong. The only reason that they're still alive is President Trump, who's willing to talk to them, but he holds all the cards. They hold none of the cards. When they talk about survival, he can finish that in a heartbeat. And when you look at the fact that the leaders that he's taken out right now with the IRGC and the Revolutionary Council, we haven't seen Khomeini at all. And we don't know what the issue is in. But we're just going to go down the line if we have to. There's no doubt in my mind Dan Kane can do that. There's no doubt XF can do that as well. It's just a matter of time. I would tell them, when you come into this table, you're just lucky you're still alive. That may not happen tomorrow or the day after, but I think we should press the advantage. And I honestly, Martha, I would make sure we have a real hardcore son of a bitch on that negotiating table.
And is that what we have here? Let's put up the picture, because I want to talk to you about the table. These are the major players in the upcoming U.S.-Iran negotiations. You've got Vice President Vance. Let's put these images up, please. You've got Steve Witkoff. You have Jared Kushner. On the other side of the table, and I want to point out, we have not had this level of discussions with Iranian leadership. We don't have relations with this country, okay? So everything you've seen has been an Omani in the middle, notes passed back and forth. It's very different what's going to happen in Pakistan this weekend. Other side of the table, you have Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. He's the parliamentary head. And you have Abbas Araghchi, who's probably the person that Americans are most familiar with as the foreign minister. He is a spokesperson. Do we have the team at the table that we need to talk as tough as you are recommending, General?
I would add a third, and I would put somebody in there who's a no-nonsense leader who understands military force and is going there. Is not a builder, is not a construction engineer.
Huh? I
was,
why? You're not?
I'm going to throw him on the blast right now. But something like a Jack King, put something like that on the ground and say, this is the way it's going to be in the future. When you look at Arachi, he's written a book on negotiations. And when he talks about the marketplace, he talks about...
You like that, right?
And I would make sure that they're not in any...
It works, not fan.
They're lucky they're still alive. In fact, we're the ones in the driver's seat. So we can demand what we want to do. And we should out there. They're not winning this war at all. And I think the fact that we've let them try to open the Strait of Hormuz, and we've let them survive. They're not doing it to the good. They're doing it because they're lucky.
So far, we don't know what is in the latest version of points for each side. We know that, in terms of enrichment, they believe that's their right as a country to enrich. They also believe, I interviewed President Pezeshkian several months back, and he said, we have the right to enrich uranium, and we are not enriching it to weapons grade. We're enriching it to the level that the IAEA has permitted us to enrich to. And that's why we hold it there, essentially. This is his argument, because that's what we can, sort of use as a power on the world stage to hold it at that level, just short of being weapons grade. What do you say to that?
Well, I think, I understand he's the president of Iran,
but he didn't know what's going on. The fact is, they were authorized to have a weapons grade, they were authorized to have enrichment at 3.67% under the JCPOA. They exceeded that. Anytime you go to 20% and more, you're heading towards weapons grade. And we know, we are very sure that they were enriching uranium at 60 to 80%. You're heading to weapons grade. And with their missile fleet that they have, we know they were heading someplace we don't want them to go and do a breakout on us. Everybody knew that. The president knew it. We knew it. That's the reason walked away from
Well, let me ask you,
the JCPOA.
General, let me ask you
One of the
this.
reasons
What is a military presence in the strait look like? If they go into this meeting and they say, no, we're in charge of the strait, everyone's going to pay $1 million or $2 million to us to get through. We have mines under the water. We know you've hit a lot of our stuff, but we've still got, buried deep missile silos that we can launch at any ship that comes through there, including your folks if you land on Carve Island. What do you say to that?
I would tell them very clearly at the negotiation table, you do something like that, you are dead. We know where you're at, we know where you live. We're gonna come and get you. And you don't have much of the military left. We're gonna take care of that as well. We can seize Carve Island, we can seize the 5 islands in the Strait, the Gosham Island and the Rock Island as well. We just make sure we go in there and tell them that. It's not a negotiation. We're gonna tell them what we're gonna do. And they've rerouted the traffic through the straits to close to the friendly territory. It's not anymore. We reroute the traffic that it's supposed to be through the original traffic.
They're rerouting because
I
I guess if you pay them, they'll reroute you around their mines. Is that right? Really quickly, sorry if you can.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they do it or not, but if we have the ability to find out, and we do it through undersea drones or minesweepers, we can do it. But we tell them right up front that if we get a tanker destroyed or a ship destroyed, we go back to what Ronald Reagan did when he made sure our ships were escorted through, and we make sure they pay the price for it. So you basically tell them you're alive today because of that. You're going to be dead tomorrow if you allow it.
Very, very important negotiations coming up in Pakistan. We didn't even get to the Israel-Lebanon question, but we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. General Kellogg, thank you very much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin. Jennifer.
Harris, for all intents and purposes, the Strait of Hormuz is de facto closed, despite what the Pentagon and White House are saying.
What has been agreed to, what's been stated, is the strait is open.
It has been relayed to him privately that is what's taking place, and these reports publicly are false.
Only 5 ships have crossed the strait on Wednesday. All 5 were bulk carriers, and none were carrying oil or gas, except for the one that you mentioned above that crossed recently. All 5 were given permission by Iran to cross and may have even paid a fee. Before the war, more than 130 ships typically crossed the Strait of Hormuz each day and did not pay any tolls. Russian TASS state news agency says Iran says it has agreed to only allow 15 vessels to pass each day. Not sure that'll fly with the White House. Iran's deputy foreign minister said today there would be no ceasefire deal and the strait would remain closed as long as Israel continues to strike Lebanon.
This body of water is Iran's territorial water. You know that this Strait of Hormuz is purely in Iran's territorial water, Oman and Iran. We're going to provide security for safe passage, and it is going to happen after the United States, actually withdraw this aggression.
The Strait of Hormuz, of course, is not Iran's territorial waters, though it is close to Iran. There seems to be some confusion whether Israel's fight against Iran's proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon violates the ceasefire deal or not. The Pakistani mediators who cobbled this agreement together says it does. Israel strikes in Lebanon could jeopardize this ceasefire, as is Iran's effective continued closure of the strait, which is their biggest leverage during ceasefire talks on Saturday in Islamabad. Iran also wants a toll, $1 per barrel passing through the strait. A typical oil tanker carries 2 million barrels. That would be $2 million per ship for the Iranians. Yesterday, President Trump told ABC there may be a joint U.S.-Iran venture to charge tolls. There has been no indication Iran has agreed to such an arrangement. The problem seems to be there have not been face-to-face negotiations yet, Harris, and the misunderstanding seems to be in essence due to a bad game of telephone and a lot of pre-talk posturing. Harris.
Yeah, I don't think it's a game. Iran thinks it actually has some leverage doing this, and it's not good, and Trump doesn't usually pull up. We'll watch it. Jennifer, thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
Benjamin Netanyahu meeting with President Trump for several hours today at the White House. The Israeli Prime Minister stressing Israel's security concerns as the United States has resumed talks with Iran, and they will continue next week. Now, moments ago, President Trump touting, quote, the tremendous relationship between the two countries and adding on Truth Social from the president, there was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. If it can, I let the Prime Minister know that will be a preference. That will be a preference. If it cannot, we will just have to see what the outcome will be. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joins me now, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War and Fox News senior strategic analyst. General, always good to have you with us. Your reaction to this meeting today and the statement from President Trump.
Well, my reaction to the meeting is I'm delighted it's taken place, and it's really quite extraordinary, Martha. President Trump has been in office 13 months, and he's met with Prime Minister Netanyahu 7 times in those 13 months. That is completely unprecedented to have those kind of meetings. It reminds me of the Churchill-Roosevelt interaction. When Churchill was in the war, Roosevelt was not. He was providing physical, material support to him, to be sure, but also moral support and also intellectual support and how to cope with it. These two men truly have a relationship, a partnerships that's joined by common interests, security of Israel to be sure, but also stability and peace in the Middle East, and the fact that there is an adversary, an enemy there, a diabolical enemy that wants the destruction of Israel and have had nuclear weapons, would likely use them. So this has brought them together time and time again. And I think the results of this meeting had twofold intent. One, to the Prime Minister to let the President know what his thoughts are about the negotiations. And certainly, I believe he's pretty clear, as our President is, that the goal would be no enrichment for nuclear, certainly, reduction of ballistic missiles significantly in numbers, but also limit the range. And the third thing is no support for the proxies. Likely, Iran will not even agree to any one of those in any substantive or consequential way. But I'm sure the Prime Minister wanted to make certain that the President heard that. And I think the second thing, in terms of the military option, I probably wanted to talk to them face to face, likely something he's done on the phone, to make sure the President understands what an historical opportunity they have here to actually set the condition for regime change. There have been 7 presidents before President Trump who had to deal with this regime. None of them have ever been in this position. And President Trump is in this position for a number of reasons. One, he stopped the nuclear deal in 2018. 2, he killed Qasem Soleimani in 2020, the iconic figure that had so much to do with the death of Americans from 82 all the way to just several years ago prior to his death. And then the third thing, he took action to destroy Iran's nuclear program. So here we are with the next step, which I think is more likely than not, and that is to finally take Iran off the board as the destabilizing adversary in the region, and with the potential for finally, after 46 years, to have some stability and enduring peace in the region. That is the historic opportunity, and I would imagine both of them would agree with that premise.
Yeah, I just want to put this picture up, the then and now, in terms of the images of the entrances to the major nuclear site at Isfahan, and you can see that it is completely buried in this second picture here, it really has been damaged so dramatically. These facilities, General Keane, and also they're funded. If you they clearly committed to spending money to try to rebuild, or at least that's what they say they're doing. They say they're stronger and stronger position now to defend themselves than they were before those strikes. Do you believe any of that?
Yeah, this is something really This is what they do. They talk real tough, and they get real hard-nosed about things. And certainly they have recovered a lot of their ballistic missiles. I'm not minimizing that, and they have rockets, and they certainly have drones. But there's all something that collectively, in a combined attack, Israel and the United States can deal with. But under pressure, they increases. There's a lot of bluster associated with it, and I'm glad you showed that. There's those nuclear sites. There's not much left of it. There's this much we know about Iran when it comes to nuclear. One, they have made the decision they want to recover it. They have made some site selection of it, and we have an understanding collectively of where that is, and that's been reported publicly. So whatever attempts they make to recover that nuclear program, likely Israel, and if necessary, the United States, would absolutely deal with that. But it's not something we have to deal with in the near term. In the near term, we have the opportunity here to potentially collapse this regime once and for all. The other thing we know is, anecdotally, from what we're getting out of Iran and the people, after the killing of so many people, 10 to 30,000, somewhere in there is a real number, 40,000 in jail, the intensity of resentment to the regime has grown in scale. I'm absolutely convinced that when we apply external military pressure to this regime in everything that is helping to sustain the regime, a holistic, comprehensive approach to it, I would bet anything that once that hits and it's over, these people will be out by the tens and hundreds of thousands again, putting in pressure on whatever is left of that regime, because they are so fed up with these guys.
It's so true. And they feel a tipping point in their bones, and they want it to happen for the most part. The people in Iran, we saw them come out in great risk to themselves, and it has been an extraordinary moment to watch. So we'll see what happens here. General Jack Keno, always great to have you with us. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
All right, the UK is building a coalition of more than 40 countries to push to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, the president of France is responding to President Trump's criticism of NATO. Matt Finn joins us live from Dubai with the latest. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Brian, behind me is the Persian Gulf. Not too far back there is the Strait of Hormuz, and President Trump has been warning that foreign countries that heavily rely on the strait need to take the lead against Iranian terror. Well, in London yesterday, 40 countries joined a virtual meeting to discuss the urgent need to diplomatically restore the flow on the Strait of Hormuz. The British foreign minister says Iran has recklessly hijacked the strait.
Our job is to take decisions in the UK national interest. That's what this government will do, not based on any other country's priority or anything in terms of the US or other countries. It's in our interest to be working with those countries that we've gathered together today on how we ensure that the Strait of Hormuz can be reopened, how we respond to these reckless Iranian attacks on international shipping.
And French President Macron has dismissed military operations to open the strait as, quote, unrealistic. And yesterday, Macron made some pointed comments seemingly aimed at President Trump and the United States. As President Trump has been warning he may pull the U.S. out of NATO, Macron was saying, when you've committed to an alliance, you live up to those commitments. This is not our operation. They can hardly complain afterward that they, the United States, are not being supported in an operation they choose to undertake alone. This is not our operation. What we want is for peace to be restored as quickly as possible. And live here in the Middle East, the loss of drinking water is a concern for some of the Gulf countries that heavily rely on desalination. And the AP is reporting right now that Iran destroyed a desalination plant in Kuwait today. And that country reportedly gets 90% of its water from desalination. Back to New York.
Thanks, Matt. Meanwhile, the U.S. reportedly taking out Iran's tallest parade. We have it on video. Just one day after President Trump warned he's ready to finish the job. The president demanding the regime make a deal as they're reportedly threatening American allies in retaliation. Retired former General, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane, joined us in the studio. General, great to see you. Blowing up that bridge, the president sending a message, just the beginning. They came back and showed a full screen of all the bridges, as if to say, blow them up if you want.
Yeah, well, listen, they have a lot of bluster, they have a lot of rhetoric, and they're losing all of their capability day in, day out. And what you see is the propaganda that they put out, largely for domestic audiences, but also trying to play to American audiences. Really what they want is continued opposition to the president in terms of what he's doing to break the will of the American people in supporting this war. And but the facts on the ground are real, and they are definitely losing their capability. When they get to the point where we will accomplish all the assigned missions that the president has given the CENTCOM commander and Prime Minister Netanyahu has given Israeli Defense Forces. We're getting closer and closer every single day to that reality.
The Wall Street Journal writes in one of the editorials saying the only reason why Iran is surviving this war is because of the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian thinking is, at the end, the strait must remain under the control because it's their only deterrence. I guess you kind of agree with that. So what do we do about it?
Well, there's a thought that once we stop operations with all assigned objectives, we're going to put on our own self-imposed ceasefire, that Iran will eventually open up the straits. That is likely. They will likely at some point open it up. But the reality is they're in control, and we cannot let that stand. That is the issue. Not that they would open it up, it's the fact that they are in control. And that would be a strategic victory for them, because then they're impacting our allies and partners in the region. They're controlling when do they shut it down. They can shut it down again and interfere with things when things aren't exactly going their way. That cannot happen, in my view. What we have to do is open it up ourselves, and we have the capability to do that. There are well thought out plans to do that.
So you've seen these plans?
I understand in a general sense what it is. And those plans, the people in charge of them have a lot of confidence in doing it because they play war games and like to do this sort of thing. We think we can absolutely accomplish that mission, and then at some point we would pass it to allies and partners for them to continue to do it. We may have to give them a couple of assets that we have that uniquely that they may not have. But nonetheless, this is a very doable, and we certainly cannot leave Iran in control where they shut that down and open it up at will. That would change the Middle East and give them a huge amount of influence. And that would be staggering after almost 2 months of taking all their offensive capability away from them and leave them as a huge geopolitical advantage which that gives them.
Absolutely. And I know the president likes to bring up and give head fakes as part of a strategy, but when he said, I'm going to leave it to somebody else to open up, that's just not practical. And we can't declare victory with that Strait of Hormuz in their control. CNN has a report out today citing 3 intel officials that say half the drones remain, half the launchers remain, and the rockets on the coast of right by the Strait of Hormuz are intact. The White House pushed back on that. You at the Institute of Study of War and all your contacts, how do you feel about this? Where do you land on this?
Well, I've never seen, I read that report, and that flies in the face, I think, is what Central Command is telling us. And certainly we're much further along than that. The reality is that the last few weeks are harder. That's the reality. Because they're doing what? What are the Iranians trying to do? They're trying to hide as many of those launchers so they can preserve capability. They're moving their drones around for the same reason, so they can preserve capability. We've knocked out pretty much all of their big ships, but the small boats are real. Even though they're smaller, they can impact the Straits of Hormuz, and they're hiding those. And every time they try to use them, we kill them. So our challenge over the next few weeks is identifying targets, and we have to keep complete surveillance. We own the airspace, so we're constantly surveilling day and night. When we identify, we destroy. There's no problem in executing destruction. The challenge is identifying. But this is about vigilance. This is about discipline. This is about our capability. We're good at it. I'm just saying that it's more challenging towards the end than it was in the beginning.
So, General, when you look at our allies, I understand this is our mission. If you want to say that they weren't briefed, someone could debate that. What I find offensive is in Austria, Italy, some limitations in France, and the UK slow to come around, are saying you can't use the bases that we finance in order to launch this operation. Do you find that disappointing?
Disappointing. That's not strong enough. It's outrageous. I mean, here we are doing something that's in our national interest, in the interest of allies in the region, to be sure, but in the world's interest. I mean, the world economy depends on the distribution of oil out of the Middle East. Everybody knows that. So the benefit that comes from pushing back the number one predator for almost 5 decades, Iran, taking away their capability, everybody benefits from that. And the fact that they take such a narrow view of this, I mean, the president has a right to be furious over the fact that France will not let us fly over their airspace, that Italy and Germany and Spain are not letting us, it's outrageous. These are bases, these are U.S. bases, and not letting us use our own U.S. bases to support the war.
Damn.
What are they thinking?
General George is now out, was asked to retire yesterday. He's a personal friend of yours. What do we lose when we lose General George?
He's a generational chief of staff, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen anybody quite like him. He's got the intelligence, he's got the discipline, his warfighting experience is enormous. He's got the warrior ethos, and he's transforming the Army and taking it into the new technology and warfare that is so changing. The truth is, he's leading the other services in most of all of that. And I don't agree with his dismissal for sure, because of what he's doing to the Army and the change it's impacting the department writ large.
That's what I've heard too. General, it was great to see you. Good luck at the Yankee game today. Thanks for keeping up with everything. Thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, great being here.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. The U.S. and Israel carrying out an unprecedented mission, effectively decapitating Iranian leadership in one of the largest military operations in modern warfare history.
Looming questions over the future of Iran this morning, but the country and its longstanding regime on edge after the Ayatollah and 40 other leaders eliminated in what we believe was one strike in broad daylight. Jennifer Griffin joining us right now with some of the stunning details from the mission, plus new details we're just learning. Jennifer.
Griff, we've just been able to confirm that it was the CIA that provided the intelligence to the Israelis that led to that strike that allowed the Israelis to drop 30 missiles on the compound of the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. That was the strike that led to the death of 40 top leaders of Iran. But we have just been able to confirm that report that was first seen in the New York Times. Now, Iranian media is reporting the former Iranian president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was killed in a strike on his home yesterday, where he was being kept under house arrest for allegedly plotting a coup. You'll remember him as the fiery Iranian leader who first shocked the world by saying openly around 2005 that Israel should be, quote, wiped off the map. We have not been able to confirm the report of his death, but we did report yesterday that his home was targeted in a joint U.S.-Israeli strike, and now it appears as if Ahmadinejad may be no more. Now, well-placed sources I've spoken to suggest the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps was given pre-firing orders in the event of a decapitation strike or strike on the command and control of the IRGC's chain of command. The head of the IRGC was killed yesterday in that strike on the Supreme Leader's compound, but the missiles we see likely are the result of those decentralized orders having been given in advance. The Iranians are not going down without a fight, however. They have fired 137 missiles and 209 drones at the United Arab Emirates, at civilian buildings there, at hotels, 66 missiles at Qatar, and 45 at Bahrain, along with 9 drones. In fact, in downtown Bahrain, the Crown Plaza Hotel was struck. Hotels and civilian apartment buildings are being hit by these missiles and drones in the neighboring Gulf states, not just being targeted are U.S. military bases. Missiles have been fired at a U.S. military base in Erbil, Iraq, however, likely by Shia militias in Iraq who have long been funded by the IRGC. A mob tried to storm the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and Pakistani security forces used batons and live fire to push back an angry crowd threatening the U.S. consulate in Karachi, Pakistan. Both Iraq and Pakistan have large Shia Muslim populations, and British Defense Secretary John Healey
said
two
chopped.
ballistic missiles had been fired towards Cyprus.
Somebody said professional. Somebody said what's up, gang. Somebody said chopped.
I've learned from Tabriz in western Iran, but it's the first time Cyprus has been targeted. The Israeli defense minister announced that Israel is now using stand-in weapons as opposed to stand-off weapons over Tehran, and will now have 24/7 air presence in the skies above Tehran. That means, in effect, that they believe that they and the U.S. military have effectively suppressed the air defense systems, or IADs, over Tehran. That's a huge step forward in terms of being able to track the movements of Iranian leaders and forces. In terms of the U.S. operation yesterday, the U.S. military carried out 900 strikes in 12 hours. The Israelis carried out 1,200 strikes in the past 24 hours, more than during the entire 12-day war last summer. In fact, the Israeli Air Force just took out 2 Iranian fighter jets preparing to take off on the tarmac from Tabriz in western Iran. Multiple sources tell me that the start of the operation had to be moved up based on intelligence and this, quote, target of opportunity, that meeting at Khamenei's compound. And as we mentioned, the New York Times was the first to report that the intelligence came from the CIA, who passed it to the Israelis. And those 30 Israeli missiles then were dropped on the compound in Tehran following the announcement of the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. There were spontaneous outbursts of celebration on the one hand, but also some crowds chanting in downtown Tehran, "Death to America." Not clear if these were spontaneous or organized protests, but you can assume that the remnants of the regime and IRGC will want to present a united front, suggesting the regime will survive. The man to watch is Ali Larijani, the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. He has now moved into the top position of power in Iran. He just gave an interview in which he threatened revenge for the killing of Khamenei and the members of his family, the defense minister and head of Iran's armed forces. He said, quote, "The United States and the Zionists have burned the heart of the Iranian people, and we will burn their hearts." Right now, I'm watching carefully the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians said they had closed the strait. That's not true. They fired on an oil tanker that it appears was actually one of their own shadow fleet. The Skylight actually had an Indian and Iranian crew. 150 ships, however, have anchored outside the strait, likely applying for supplemental insurance before entering the strait. The U.S. military watching carefully for any signs the strait is being mined by the IRGC Navy. The Iranians use civilian vessels, of course, to hide their activities in the straits and could use them as cover to drop mines if they feel the regime is on the verge of collapse. Griff?
You know, Jennifer, let's go back just because if the reports are true that Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has been eliminated, that's pretty significant when you consider, I mean, he had fiery speeches here in New York at the United Nations, but of course we do know that at his time of being in power, he was helping supply many of those IEDs that were killing our soldiers in Iraq.
His killing would be largely symbolic. It certainly would be justice for his role in those IEDs, the EFPs that were sent to Iraq and maimed and killed U.S. soldiers and Marines. But he had been largely marginalized within Iran. In fact, he was under house arrest, we understand, from last summer because the current leadership didn't trust him. They thought he might be planning a coup, or that was the excuse that they had him under house arrest.
And so now you have Ali Larijani, who has perhaps the biggest target on his back in human history at the moment.
I would say anyone rising up through the ranks has a huge bullseye on their back. They will certainly know this, but we've seen from the Israeli actions against Hezbollah in Lebanon and elsewhere that they usually come back in, and as soon as they have the intelligence, they would likely strike and try and take out that next leadership layer. But right now, Ali Larijani, he is a brutal leader. He was behind a lot of the most brutal suppression of the protests in December and January. He is vicious, and he's by no means a reformer or someone that U.S. can do a deal with.
Jennifer, you've been following military missions for a long time.
you've seen extraordinary success under this administration, whether it was the removal of Maduro last summer. Operation Midnight Hammer was, amazingly done, very precise. Based on what you're seeing now, and I know it's only been 24 hours, the president has promised that this would be, said this should be a couple-week war or engagement. Do you believe that he can contain this to 2 weeks, especially as we're seeing, other nations in the Gulf getting hit, but also engaging? Will that keep it contained? Is that helpful to keeping it contained? Just help us work through that, because I think in terms of political support and public support for this, keeping it contained must be really important for the president right now.
Well, I do know that there are certain off-ramps that the president has been given that he could take at any time to take the U.S. military out of this operation. I believe that this will likely go on for weeks. And in terms of the success, I think it's premature to describe it as successful, except to say that, of course, the military in the first 24 hours has performed flawlessly. No U.S. casualties. None of the U.S. bases have really suffered any sort of real damage. They've had good air and missile defense systems in place. They did incredible planning in terms of drawing down forces and military equipment at those bases in the Gulf. And so what they are accomplishing with the Israelis, and certainly with that intelligence that took out the top leadership and the supreme leader of Iran, is, bar none, will be studied for some time. The question is what comes afterwards, and whether they are able to achieve the goal of removing the regime and actually starting a fresh day in Iran where they are able to take control, or whether this descends into a civil war and spreads chaos to the region, whether the rest of the region gets engulfed in war. I think that is really a question mark, because this, as we've seen with many conflicts, the situation against Maduro and
he breaks the Congress as required by the Workhouse Resolution. He has 60 days, even under that resolution, before further requirements come into effect. And what we need to focus on now is continuing to support these great young Americans that are carrying out this extraordinary mission. It's early days, but we're a little more than 24 hours in. And I was reflecting on 35 years ago when I was going into Iraq. The military has been magnificent. The coordination between the United States and Israel, 2,000 missions over the last 24 hours, the intel that allowed us to take out the top tier of leadership, the extraordinary coordination and effectiveness. It's something to behold, but we've got a lot of work to do. There's still more work to be done.
We do, and to Senator Kane's point, he says, listen, we wouldn't be here had President Trump not torn up the deal that had been worked out with Iran that was keeping them in check. He says the enrichment wasn't happening, that they were on track in a way that we could control or know exactly what they were up to.
It's honestly, it's almost laughable. This is all political theater. There's no regime in the world that has more blood on its hands than Iran. It's killed thousands of Americans. Through the previous operation, we took out and set back their nuclear program significantly, but they have thousands of ballistic missile launchers. They use those regularly against U.S. forces in the region, against our ally Israel. This is a regime that continues to perpetrate violence throughout the world against Americans. No regime in the last 20 years has killed more Americans than Iran. So there was a moment where the president gave Iran many alternatives for off-ramps. A peaceful resolution to this. You have to get rid of your ballistic missiles. You have to both say you're going to stop. I heard the senator in the previous segment. Right now, part of what we're hearing from our sources in the administration is that Iran was continuing to work on its nuclear program. So this is absolutely justified, and this is an imminent threat to Americans around the region and around the world. And if you have any doubt about that, just look at the sad list of people that have been killed by Iranian proxies.
So where we go now is the big question. What happens? Is there true regime change? Who's waiting in the wings? The New York Times editorial board says this: Mr. Trump's approach to Iran is reckless. His goals are ill-defined. He's failed to line up the international and domestic support that would be necessary to maximize the chances of a successful outcome. He has disregarded both domestic and international law for warfare. Your response?
Well, we talked about the law, so think, again, that's complete nonsense, and we've got 50 years of Republicans and Democrats saying so. In terms of the mission, the president was very, very clear. We need to destroy the missiles. We need to destroy the missile launching capability. We need to destroy the Iranian Navy, which can block the Straits of Hormuz, which is a huge deal for the world and for the global economy. And that is a prerequisite and then this lays the predicate for the Iranian people to step up and ultimately take control of their own destiny. The president's encouraged them to do that. This is the first president that's actually stood with the Iranian people. Go back to President Obama. Those protests on the streets, President Obama, even in his own memoirs, is saying, boy, I wish I would have handled that differently. This president has stood up for the Iranian people. He's given Iran the leadership, the Ayatollahs, every opportunity for an off-ramp. Sadly, they didn't take it. Now we need to push the moment. We need to stay on offense and eliminate this capability to kill Americans, to kill Israelis, to kill our allies. By the way, attacking our Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Qatar. I mean, this is a regime that has no allies in period. But one final thing I'll say: this is also the regime that gave 57,000 drones to Russia in its battle against Ukraine. This is also a regime that provides 80% of its oil to our adversary China. This is a factor that's got American blood on its hands, and the president's actions are completely constitutional.
So I talked to you about what the New York Times had to say. Not surprising they would be critical of this president, as they often are, but there are questions and critics on the right as well about what we're doing, why we're doing this now. The Federalist writes this: you can't tell us one week that we have to strike Iran because the regime is killing protesters, and the next week tell us that we have to strike Iran because the regime is enriching uranium at sites that are supposed to be destroyed. At a certain point, it begins to look like the Trump administration was fishing for a reason to strike Iran.
Well, first, as I said, I think this ballistic missile capability is an ongoing threat to the region. And we have unfortunately, the list of Americans killed to show that. On the Iranian capability, the president's earlier actions has taken back the nuclear capacity quite significantly. So the problem is not that they have nuclear capability. The problem is, despite their promises, they have begun to try to renew and restart their nuclear program. So this did pose a threat to the region. He gave them lots of alternatives for off-ramps. But listen, I mean, I'm someone who looks at those 20 years of war in Iraq. You can't, as an American, not have been scarred by that and worry about entanglement. But I've got a lot of confidence that the president sees that, knows that. He's very specific about how he deploys military forces. I don't see any likelihood of American boots on the ground. And he keeps putting the pressure and the opportunity back in the hands of the people that can take advantage of it. The Iranian people, this is their path to their destiny, to self-determination.
Are you convinced that they will be able to do that? What are your words in the transition period?
Well, no, it's going to be challenging. As I said, we're at early days. We're at early days of accomplishing a military mission. I think people should not think. We still show thousands of missiles on the ground. We have air superiority, but there's lots of work to be done in terms of taking out those missiles and the manufacturing capability. I'm worried that if we're not careful, we'll lose some of the international security. The very tepid response of the Europeans has been disappointing, to say the least. We're not going to be able to fix Iran. The Iranian people are going to have to step up. It might be some version of people within the current regime that are able to step up and paint a new day for Iran. It might be an entirely new regime. We don't know the future yet, but we need to put them in the best position to find out for themselves.
Yeah, the regime's roots obviously run very deep and very broad. Senator, thank you.
Thank
Good to see you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.
And we begin this Sunday morning with the war on Iran escalating. Just as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth warned on Friday, the amount of firepower above Iran is about to surge dramatically. On this day 9 of Operation Epic Fury, even as Iran's leadership has already been wiped out and its military capabilities degraded. Following U.S. and Israeli strikes, President Trump says there will be no deal with Iran without unconditional complete surrender, even as Iran continues to lash out at neighboring Gulf countries and maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz grinds nearly to a halt, pushing the price of oil higher. The Trump administration has enacted a $20 billion reinsurance program for oil tankers and other ships to get traffic moving once again through this vital waterway, where 20% of the world's oil is transported every day. Crude oil closed above $90 a barrel on Friday. It is up 27% just in the last 1 week. As China feels the impact, it buys the bulk of Iran's oil. Some 90% China buys from Iran. Now, political strategists are worrying whether the war and its impact will collide with the president's efforts to rein in inflation just before the midterm elections, where the economy and affordability is most important to voters. Joining me now in the Sunday Morning Kitchen exclusive is the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt. Caroline, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Maria. Great to see you.
And of course, as the impact of this war is affecting American citizens and consumers through the increase in the price of oil, the president needs to walk a balance here. What is the president expecting to do to rein in those prices right now, where we are watching and waiting for those midterm elections in November?
Well, the president is watching everything, both abroad through the demolition of the rogue Iranian regime through Operation Epic Fury, and of course here at home. And President Trump can walk and chew gum at the same time. You saw him this past week at the White House hosting a ratepayer protection pledge roundtable with big tech companies, AI companies, to talk about how they are picking up the cost of electricity bills across the country and American communities to drive down costs. The president inherited the worst affordability crisis in our nation's history from Joe Biden, and look at the progress he has made in the course of the past year. Now, with respect to what's happening with gas prices right now, this is a short-term disruption for the long-term gain of taking out the rogue Iranian terrorist regime and finally ending their restriction of the free flow of energy in the Middle East and in the Strait of Hormuz. And even with this short-term period throughout Operation Epic Fury, the president and his energy team are on the ball. They've announced political risk insurance for cargo vessels and oil ships that are going to be moving through the strait. They've announced that the U.S. Navy, if and when necessary, will escort those tankers to ensure that oil can move. The president is also tapping into our newfound market in Venezuela, where, again, there were a lot of panic-ins about that military operation, and look at the success. We are working in a cooperative manner with the interim authorities to bring that oil into the market as expeditiously as possible. And so, again, this is a short-term disruption. We're seeing a slight increase in oil and gas prices, but ultimately, taking out the rogue Iranian regime is going to be a good thing for the oil industry, and those prices are going to come back down, just like they have over the course of the past year because of President Trump's American energy dominance agenda.
Yeah, I know that this was a major priority for the president right off the bat, coming up with that reinsurance plan in terms of ensuring that you could get traffic moving at a regular pace once again in the Strait of Hormuz. But oil executives are telling me that more security is needed. So we want to understand specifically when we might see a let up here. It feels like the Iranians are threatening the U.S., saying, yeah, come to the strait, we welcome you to actually ramp up the fight.
Well, the Iranians are making a lot of threats with their words, but if you look at their actions with respect to their military, they're not as strong or powerful as they were 9 days ago. That is for sure. We have completely wiped out their Navy. Their Navy is now deemed combat ineffective. Their retaliatory strikes with ballistic missiles has decreased 90%. And as their attacks are decreasing, the power and prowess of the U.S. military is increasing. And so we are going to continue to completely obliterate the rogue Iranian regime and ensure that they can never possess a nuclear weapon, that their ballistic missiles can no longer threaten U.S. personnel and our assets in the region. And the mere fact that Iran is now pointing their capabilities at their Gulf partners in the region who have tried to remain neutral and at peace with them for many years, they're targeting civilians. It just underscores the point that this operation was necessary, not just to protect the American people and our assets and troops and bases in the region, but also to ensure a truly safe and prosperous Middle East for the rest of the world. And President Trump is the first president in nearly 5 decades to actually have the courage to do this, and he should be commended for it.
Yeah, and the president had an interesting exchange on Air Force One over the weekend, Carol. I want to get your take about this idea of troops on the ground. Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be, and President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table. But as commander-in-chief, there's no greater priority or responsibility to this president than, of course, protecting the American people and protecting our troops and our bases in the Middle East, which Iran has been threatening for 47 years. They have killed and maimed thousands of American soldiers, and President Trump was not going to allow Iran to attack our bases and our troops and our men and women in the Middle East first. And that's why he took this historic action by launching Operation Epic Fury.
Now, the president is also trying to protect elections. So in the middle of all of this, he is talking about the Save Act, Caroline. And I want to put up this tweet that the president put out yesterday. Over the weekend, he's been talking about the Save Act. And in this tweet, not only does he reiterate the point that you have to have ID to vote, all voters must show voter ID, all voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote, no mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. But he also adds to this two more items. No men in women's sports, no transgender mutilation surgery for children. Caroline, you've got to explain this to us because already the president is getting pushback from Democrats. They say this is dead on arrival. Why would the president want to muddy up this issue and add transgender into the number one sports right now? When the issue of the all have already been accepted by some Democrats.
There should be no pushback to any of the common sense proposals in the Save America Act. Let's talk about what is in this bill and what President Trump is pushing for here. Mandatory voter ID in the United States of America. 90% of our country, Democrats and Republicans, support this common sense solution to secure American elections. The only people in this country who don't support that are radical left Democrats on Capitol Hill. That's number one. Number two, requiring U.S. citizenship to register to vote. Another common sense measure that absolutely must be done to secure our elections and the future of our country. But these other two ideas, with no men in women's sports and with ending transgender surgeries for minor children, these are common sense proposals and policies that, again, are backed by the vast majority of our country. If you look at the public polling from Americans on both sides of the aisle, most Americans don't want young children to be going through gender mutilation surgeries. Most Americans don't want men competing in women's sports. These are winning issues for the American people. They are losing battles for politicians on Capitol Hill, and that's why all members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, need to pass the Save America Act as soon as possible.
Real quick, Caroline, before you go, the president has removed Kristi Noem from the Department of Homeland Security and put in, hopefully, Markwayne Mullin. Will he get confirmed? The governor there in Oklahoma has to name someone on a temporary basis. We're wondering when that confirmation hearing will happen on Markwayne Mullin.
Yes, we are totally confident Senator Mullin will be confirmed, and we're going to work with the Senate to make sure that happens as quickly as possible. And Democrats on Capitol Hill need to fund the Department of Homeland Security. It is absolutely crucial that we get our FEMA workers paid, our TSA agents paid. President Trump has been calling on them to do this for weeks, and it's ridiculous that they're shutting down this department for blatantly political reasons.
All right, Caroline, great to talk with you this morning. We so appreciate you addressing all of these issues with us this morning. White House Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Thank you, Caroline.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
So what happened today, President Trump is set to hold a press conference with top military officials on Iran amid emerging reports that a deal to end the conflict and reopen key shipping routes could be done as soon as today.
This comes as we learn brand new details on the Commander-in-Chief's busy Easter weekend after he personally ordered a historic rescue for 2 U.S. airmen that were trapped in Iran after their jet went down. That involved over 100 special ops forces, dozens of aircraft, and a CIA deception campaign that sounds straight out of Hollywood.
The pilot of the jet was rescued on Friday before a complicated search and rescue mission was set off for the other service member on board. That second airman, the weapons systems officer, surviving more than 30 hours behind enemy lines, climbing more than 7,000 feet to hide in a mountain crevice as Tehran called for his capture. That's when the airman activated an emergency beacon armed with only a pistol to defend himself. And we now know that while the crew member was being rescued, the U.S. unleashed an arsenal to protect the extraction point, including drones, B-1 bombers, and nearly 100 2,000-pound satellite-guided bombs. So President Trump telling the mission success, posting, quote, "This brave warrior was behind enemy lines in the treacherous mountain of Iran, being hunted down by our enemies who were getting closer and closer by the hour, but was never truly alone because his commander-in-chief, Secretary of War, Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, and fellow warfighters were monitoring his location 24 hours a day and diligently planning for his rescue."
The president adding, quote, "This is the first time in military memory that 2 U.S. pilots have been rescued separately, deep in enemy territory. We will never leave an American warfighter behind."
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey is joining us live from Israel with more on this daring and extraordinary mission. Hi, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. I've been speaking with U.S. and Israeli officials about this daring rescue operation over the weekend that's been described as one for the history books. Fox News learned that it was Saturday morning when the CIA was able to confirm this was the location and indeed the airman who was missing after that F-15 was shot down on Friday over the skies of southwest Iran. The CIA was confirmed this was a deception campaign by the Iranians trying to lure in special forces and then attack them. But once they were able to use advanced capabilities and confirm this was the airman, the message was delivered to the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, the Joint Chiefs Chairman, and ultimately the President. That's when I'm told President Trump made the decision to order this operation to rescue the airmen. And within 12 hours, there were U.S. boots on the ground inside of Iran conducting this operation. I want to pull up this timeline here to show you just how intricate the details were as this was progressing over the weekend. Remember, it was late Thursday night when the jet was shot down. Friday, the pilot of the F-15E was recovered by special forces, but then there was that crew member, the weapons systems officer, who was evading capture inside of Iran for up to 2 days. And the Iranian regime was putting out an award of $60,000 for his capture, telling people to go to the area. But he had activated that emergency beacon, and he was hiding in a mountain ridge, we are told. That's when that special operations force got the call Saturday morning to start sending planes to Iran and start this mission to rescue him. Now, the president says that he was injured, but again, everyone made it out of Iranian territory unharmed when the operation was taking place. And I'm told that the success of this had to do with a CIA deception campaign. A senior U.S. official telling me over the weekend that the CIA leaked through multiple sources that they were trying to move a valuable package out of the country through a maritime exfil. This was meant to draw the Iranian forces away from the area where the U.S. crew member was located. That deception campaign, I'm told, worked, and they were able to conduct this mission and safely rescue the crew member. Now, the Wall Street Journal today is reporting the complex mission quickly ran into problems, officials said, as the U.S. redirected aircraft in the region to help with the mission. Some planned targets, including missile launcher sites, were left untouched. That allowed the Iranians to fire more weapons than usual in recent days, according to officials. The first attempt to rescue this airman actually had to be aborted. 2 H-6 helicopters did take small arms fire from the ground, and the crew members were wounded, but they did safely return to friendly airspace in Kuwait. Now, guys, again, as this was taking place, there were multiple moving parts here, and I'm told the coordination was at such a high level that the president was directly involved each and every hour to ensure that this was a successful operation. And what's important to note here is that the Pentagon had prepared contingency plans, understanding that when you send more than 100 special forces deep into Iranian enemy territory, things can go wrong. But they were able to conduct these contingency plans in a way that allowed all of these special forces, along with the rescue crew member, to get out of harm's way. And again, we are told this is a historic operation. It has been described by both U.S. and Israeli officials as something that could not have been done by any other military than that of the United States.
I think, Trent, what's really remarkable, if you could speak to also, is the fact that they were able to go in just south of Isfahan, that nuclear area we struck during Midnight Hammer last summer. That's where they set up this temporary forward operating base, or FARP, a forward arming and refueling point on the ground, and they brought in 2 specialized C-130s to set it up. But then even with the ability to do that, the C-130, one of the C-130s, gets stuck in the sand. They have to alter the plan, ultimately having to destroy them before they ultimately get out. Walk us through that part of it.
Yeah, a source told me this operation speaks to the excellence of the U.S. military and their ability to move and think on the fly. We understand that at least one U.S. transport plane got stuck and had to be destroyed. They altered plans in real time and were able to get out of harm's way. You see this map here. This is the location in southwest Iran. It is relatively deep inside of Iranian territory and just south of the city of Isfahan, where we know that the IRGC has military leadership, officials, and also the infrastructure to launch.
Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing. Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. I'm filming this on April 9th, and we actually have a different topic than the Iran war. North Korea pulling out multiple big moves, including the unveiling of new super weapons, secret weapons that they are letting the world know that they have for the first time. This is coming strategically as they have a huge meeting with China as China continues to look at invading Taiwan. Will North Korea play a role in that invasion by possibly starting a conflict with South Korea or Japan to mitigate what impact they could have to help Taiwan? We shall see. But we got a lot to get into. Before we get into it, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Totally free, huge boost to this channel. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about North Korea? What do you think about their weapons? What kind of threat are they, and how should they be handled? Let me know in the comments below. Hit the notification bell, all notifications turned on, you won't miss a thing. And then Instagram, David_Hookstead, XDHookstead. That's where you can find me on social media. My DMs are wide open. Reach out with whatever you got. Now, let's get into it. So we're going to start with this. Again, I'm filming this on Thursday, April 9th. On Wednesday, April 8th, depending on where you are, it will be very early morning hours, or if you're more in that time zone, more in the mid to late morning, early afternoon hours. The official Japanese government announced that it had detected multiple ballistic missile launches from North Korea. It simply said, emergency alert. North Korea has launched a suspected ballistic missile. More updates to follow. It's very important to know, when North Korea does a missile test, it does it in a way that is different from the rest of the world. So when China does them, when we do them, when Russia does them, we notify those countries in advance. Hey, we're going to do a missile test. That you're going to pick some stuff up on your sensors. Your satellites are going to see some stuff. It's just a test. Nothing big is going on. Don't overreact. We've had many times through history where missile tests were almost mistaken for an actual attack. The reason we do that is to make sure that China, Russia, they don't make that mistake. North Korea does not do that. North Korea notifies nobody before they start testing missiles. They just fire them. We got to monitor them, and we track them to make sure that they're not actually going to hit the United States, our allies, Japan, South Korea, Guam, Pearl Harbor, whatever it might be. That makes them very belligerent and makes them very dangerous. So that is worth noting. So the Japanese announcing ballistic missiles in the air, some kind of firing is underway. Now, we have more information on it here. Then we're going to get into the secret weapons or the new weapon systems they unveiled. It says North Korea fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the sea Wednesday in its second launch event in 2 days. South Korea's military said hours after a North Korean official released crude insults against Seoul's hopes for warmer relations. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said several missiles lifted off from North Korea's eastern coast in the Wonsan area on Wednesday morning and flew about 150 miles in each direction toward the northeastern waters. In addition, North Korea ballistic missile fire Wednesday traveled more than 700 kilometers off the northeast coast. Japan's defense ministry said it assessed the missile fell in waters outside of the exclusive economic zone. North Korea's military said it maintains a readiness to repel any provocations by North Korea under a solid military alliance with the United States. It earlier said it detected the launch of the unidentified projectile from the North Korean capital region on Tuesday. I want to get this off the screen for you. South Korea reported the projectile is also likely a ballistic missile, disappeared from South Korean radars, displaying an abnormal development in its initial launch stage, indicating the launch might have ended in failure, but we do not know. Now, what type of missiles were these likely? The biggest ballistic missiles they have are the Hwasong 7, which you can see here, and that is the launch range of the Hwasong 7 is the green circle, I believe there. That is what a mock-up looks like. It is a liquid-propelled medium-range ballistic missile developed by North Korea. Developed in the mid-1980s, it scaled up adaptation of the Soviet R-7 Elbrus missiles, more commonly known as the Scud. The inventory is estimated to be around 200 to 300 missiles. The U.S. Air Force estimates that fewer than 100 launchers, though, are operational. Now, we've learned a lot about launchers and missiles from Iran. You can have a lot of missiles, but you need launchers to get them out. The other option would be the Puck Guk Song 2, which is a North Korean intermediate ballistic missile developed in 2017. It is nuke capable, so they can put nukes on them. The other one is the KN-25, which was designed in 2019 and has a range of up to 240 miles. So those are the three ballistic missiles they've got. So they are firing these missiles. Now, they are also test firing new secret missiles and secret weapons. Let's get into that right now. Now, when it comes to the secret weapons or the new weapons that they have unveiled, there's a couple here we're going to get into. This comes from via Reuters. It says North Korea tested a new cluster bomb warhead on a ballistic missile and on an electromagnetic weapon this week. So an EMP and cluster bombs. Now, cluster bombs are not new. We've known about those. Iran's been using them a bunch against Israel. But the EMP, they're making EMPs to knock out energy. That is a new capability for the North Koreans. It says any move seen as part of efforts by Pyongyang to showcase its capacity to fight a modern war. The country's Academy of Defense Science and Missile Administration also conducted tests of carbon fiber bombs and global short-range anti-aircraft carrier missile systems. So they are building missiles to sink aircraft carriers and carbon fiber bombs. If we scroll down here, it says Kim Jong-sik, a general who oversaw the test, said the electromagnetic weapons and carbon fiber bombs were special assets for North Korea's military. Now that's interesting. What is a carbon fiber bomb? A carbon fiber bomb is known as a blackout bomb, sometimes called a graphite bomb. What it does, doesn't blow up on the ground, blows up in the air. It throws carbon fiber everywhere. Gets caught in electrical wires, power transformers, electrical substations, and carbon is highly conductive. So it wreaks havoc on electrical systems. So it's a little different from an EMP. An EMP sends out that pulse then fries everything. What this does is it uses carbon, throws it up into the air, comes down on whatever the electrical systems are in the area, and it completely destroys it. It's not like a big bomb going off where a whole city gets melted, if you will, but it is a devastating weapon that the North Koreans are now claiming that they have and have tested. And furthermore, right here, they are building MERV. What is MERV? It says North Korea conducted a test of carbon fiber, solid fuel engine capable of being mounted on a multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle. MERV. MERV is when you have a bunch of warheads in one, goes up into the atmosphere, they break up, then they split up, targeting independently, hence multiple independent re-entry vehicles that are able to hit a variety of different targets. It makes intercepting the missile incredibly missile be? That would be the Longsong 19, most likely, is a North Korean solid fuel ICBM first tested in October 2024. It's an evolution of the Longsong 18. And right here, it can go 9,300 miles, and it is MIRV capable to carry nukes. It can hit just about anywhere in the United States of America. So that, my friends, is obviously not good. Now, at the same time this is going on, it says in a notable development, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to visit North Korea to hold talks with his North Korean counterpart, Foreign Minister Cho Sun-hu, between April 9th and 10th. The visit is notable as the last publicly known visit by a Chinese foreign minister was 7 years ago, back in 2019. A high-level media cooperation between the two East Asian nations has waned in years since. Why is China trying to look to get North Korea closer than they already are after relations haven't been at their peak for 7 years? Well, it goes back to what I said at the start of the video about a potential invasion of Taiwan. If they invade Taiwan, they're going to probably need North Korea to play some role if the crisis escalates into a full-blown regional war, which it probably will. At the same time, North Korea is trying to build as many advanced new weapon systems as it possibly can. Yes, its people are starving. That's because they invest every penny they have into these weapon systems. So you got to look at the big picture. Don't look at what's right in front of you. Look what's 300, 400, 500 yards to the road as we're traveling that direction and what could be coming. So as of this filming, we know North Korea has launched multiple ballistic missiles, missiles, testing their military capabilities. They are now developing EMPs and carbon fiber bombs, blackout bombs. And at the same time, they're developing broader MIRV capabilities, and China is trying to bring them closer into the sphere ahead of invasion on Taiwan. So this might not seem like very big news given what's going on with Iran. I would say it is a very important news to follow because it could turn out to be huge down the stretch. So that is where we are at as of me filming this video on April 9th. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see y'all again when we have more updates. Welcome in, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're watching from today. I'm filming this on March 31st, and we have a lot of updates to get into. As a massive explosion his rock and his bullet target in Lebanon as the Iranian-backed terror group continues to try to launch into Israel, as well as we have major comments from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Dan Raising-King, specifically about B-52 bombers roaming freely over the skies, proving that Iranians' air defenses are completely obliterated. And we have an update about the status of Iran's new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khomeini. So we got a lot to get into. Before we get into it, as always, make sure to like and subscribe. Totally free, huge boost to the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Get extremely active in the comments. I love the discussions that are happening. Do you support the war? Do you think it's going well? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the notification bell, all notifications on you, won't miss a thing. And then you know the drill. Instagram, David_Hosted, @XDHosted. That's where you can find me on social media. My DMs are wide open. Let's get into it now. So this is a Hezbollah stronghold, an apartment or residential complex used by Hezbollah that was struck earlier today on March 31st by the Israeli Air Force. This is one of the craziest explosions we've seen in the war so far. Let's watch. Just completely gone. That missile or bomb dropping right on it, you can actually see. I'm going to pause it right there. You can see the projectile coming down right above the building at that moment, and then taking out a full stronghold. That organization is a terror organization in Lebanon, backed and funded by the Iranian government. There are also IRGC members in Lebanon fighting alongside Hezbollah. So at this moment, the campaign, the air campaign, not just in Iran, but against their proxies, whether it be Lebanon, Iraq, they are getting hit wherever they can be found, not just by the United States, but by the Israeli Air Force as well. As watching. Gigantic explosion. And then right here, this is an IRG stronghold in Tehran being hit by Israeli missiles. So you can see the missiles coming in. When they cut out, that is when the explosion happens. So these are IRGC strongholds that are being targeted by the Israeli Air Force as the war. This video footage just being released today on March 31st. So the strikes continue. Now, if you want to see what the aftermath of some of this damage is, this is in Tehran. This is the aftermath of a U.S. strike. Right there, I'll pause it right there. You can see there's debris everywhere. One building completely destroyed. Let's go back to the start right here. You can see this building, the walls have been blown out. Only the steel beams remain, some concrete remains. Otherwise, look at the top of your screen. You can see that building has been utterly and completely destroyed. And then right here in Zangan, Western Iran, this was a targeted strike on a building housing military and government officials. Again, the building is completely gone. Only the beams remain. So whoever was in that building when it got hit, not great. Now we've got some interception video here. This is a one-way attack drone from the Iranians, a Shahed attack drone that was fired. Let's watch. Yeah. Right there, boom. Here it comes. We have the intersection right there. Massive explosion in the sky, as well as this is interceptors over northern Israel taking down. There you go, right there, explosion on the screen. As rockets and missiles continue to be fired. So there's a second one right there. So Israeli air defenses, while showing serious cracks at times, continue to knock down what they can get. Also, we are now learning another senior official has been killed. Jamshid Ajagai, advisor to the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran, has been killed. That, by my count, is about the 10th senior leaders they've killed since, I believe, Sunday alone. So they are knocking out senior leaders one after another. They are making sure that the senior leadership is completely obliterated. That way, the government does not have the ability to coordinate and try to counterattack and retain power. What they're doing is they're opening up, setting the stage for the people of Iran to rise up. Now, on that note, a lot of people have been wondering, where is the new Supreme Leader, Mossab Khomeini? We haven't seen him in public. He's released letters, allegedly released letters written by him, but nobody knows who this guy is. Russia's ambassador is saying that he is in Iran, though. He is not in Russia. There were previous reports that he'd been evacuated to Russia in order to seek medical treatment. Now we are learning that the Russians are publicly saying that he is actually still in Iran. Now, next up, we have video that shows that the Ohio class submarine is on the move, being moved through the Middle East. And as Lucas Tomlinson of Fox News says, it can carry 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles and dozens of Navy SEALs that can be delivered via SEAL delivery vehicles. So what does this mean? Well, obviously, you have more than 150 Tomahawks. You can cause immense damage to the enemy with that kind of firepower, but you can also put SEAL Team 6 operators on the submarine. They can get into an SDV, and then they can launch to an area to conduct whatever the mission might be. This is similar to what we saw with the mission in North Korea with SEAL Team 6. That's an example of how they can use the SEAL delivery vehicle to get into a hostile environment, sneak in at night, and do whatever it is that must be done. So we are flooding in more Navy assets, probably Navy SEALs on this ship, could be SEAL Team 6, we don't know the specifics, but more assets continuing to move into the Middle East at this hour. Now, stick with me, we've got a bunch of comments from Hegseth and Dan King, as well as some cool photos of the Marine Expeditionary Unit. So let's watch this clip of Hegseth.
See if you see any like major details like you want.
Boots on the ground. I don't understand why the base, which they have already, wouldn't have faith in his ability to execute on this. Look at his track record of pursuing peace through strength, America first outcomes. What he's simply saying is exactly true, and I've said from this point, we're not going to foreclose anyone. You can't fight a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. If our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we can come after these boots on the ground, and guess what? There are. So if we needed to, we could execute those options on behalf of the president.
So there's Pete Hegseth not ruling out boots on the ground during a press briefing today on March 31st at the Pentagon, leaving the door open to a potential large-scale ground operation or a limited-scale ground operation. Also making it clear he is not going to telegraph what he is planning to do when it comes to Iran. Furthermore, right here, we have Hegseth talking about leading some of the troops fighting and how they want to continue to fight.
I witnessed lethality.
Actually, hold on, let me get this teed up for you. Here we go.
I met a junior airman as the sun was going down, a chill was setting on the tarmac, who, when asked what they needed, she simply looked up at me with a sly smile on her face and said, "More bombs, sir, and bigger bombs. We will happily oblige her."
So there's Pete Hegseth announcing that morale is high among the troops who are fighting. They want bigger bombs to hit Iran, and the Pentagon has every intention of getting those bombs. Now, this is a moment from the press conference that is getting a fraction of the attention it deserves. And I want to dig into this with you guys. So Dan King, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, said B-52s are conducting overland operations. Now, we knew the B-52s were loaded with standoff munitions, and they were flying close, firing those standoff munitions and obliterating targets. Now the airspace is so controlled by the United States. Remember, B-52, not stealthy. Not stealthy in the least bit. It is a massive target for any type of air defense you got. Their air defenses are so depleted, as Dan Kane reveals here, that they are doing overland operations. Let's watch.
Facilities deep within Iranian territory. And over the past 30 days, we've struck more than 11,000 targets. Given the increase in air superiority, we've successfully started to conduct the first overland B-52 missions, which allow us, as we've said before, to continue to get on top of the enemy. And as the Secretary talked about, switch towards more and more dynamic targets, servicing mobile targets around the belt.
So what that means, dynamic targeting, the way it was explained to me, and if you guys know, let me know in the comments below, that they're hitting targets, they're getting real-time information as the targets are changing, and then they are continuing those strikes. The fact B-52s are just flying at free will over Iran is a really bad sign for the Islamic regime, and a really good sign for the United States of America. Now, Admiral Brad Cooper also providing some updates. Let's watch what he had to say.
Every branch of the military is achieving unprecedented success. Our naval forces have launched waves upon waves with missiles and fighter aircraft from the sea. U.S. Air Forces extended our reach with refueling tankers while executing a high volume of airstrikes into Iran with fighters and bombers. Our soldiers and Marines have delivered long-range strikes from land and mounted robust air defense to not only protect Americans but our partners as well. And our Space Force has given us the ultimate high ground, delivering space superiority, which has been a critical enabler to this fight. After witnessing the absence.
So there is Admiral Brad Cooper making it clear all cylinders of the U.S. military are firing as they dominate the enemy on the ground, whether it be the Army, the Navy, the Marines, Space Force, the Air Force, whatever it is. The United States military, the best military on the planet, continues to get the job done, but there is more work to do. Lastly, we know the Marine Expeditionary Unit is on the way. Photos released by U.S. Marines show them with suppressed rifles, training, doing drills for what could possibly be ground operations inside Iran. So you can see them right there, weapons up. These photos released and cleared by the United States military. So they are ready if and when that operation is ordered. So as of me filming this on March 31st, as of this update, we have more massive explosions in Iran. Air defense systems are roaring. Hegseth, Kane, and Cooper making it clear the United States military is getting the job done. And now all eyes are on whether or not there will be some type of ground operation in the near future here as the war continues to rage. So that is what we have. As always, please make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all when we have more updates.
And right now, bringing details about the nearly 100 Special Operations Forces and nearly 100 bombs used to evacuate a U.S. airman missing more than 36 hours after his jet went down behind enemy lines in Iran. The serious firepower reportedly included 4 B-1 bombers from a larger air armada that dropped nearly 102,000 satellite-guided bombs to ward off the Iranians who were trying to find him and ultimately getting into some heavy fire. Let's step back because you can't overstate the role the CIA played in this. Remember, on Thursday, the jet goes down in the Khuzestan province. They rescue on Friday the pilot, but the weapons systems officer climbs into a mountain crevice. The CIA initially used deception campaign inside Iran to throw the Iranians off of the scent. We know that the airman is alive. He's hiding. He's using his seer expertise to evade and survive, but yet we don't know where he is. It's been described as a needle in a haystack. So the first part of the CIA's campaign was to put out that they'd already located the airmen and were doing a ground extraction, a ground exfil, putting the Iranians off the scent so that you were chasing what they thought was a ground operation while we brought in the air search and rescue. Now the deception campaign confused the Iranians and allowed the CIA then to use special technology, never before used successfully. We don't fully know those details, hopefully learn more, but the CIA using state-of-the-art technology to continue to locate the airman. He climbs to a 7,000 elevation mountain crevice hiding spot and is able to transpond. Ultimately, there were initial concerns, by the way, because the U.S. thought this might be a trap. The first transmission reportedly from that airman was God is good. And with that, let's bring in retired CIA operations officer Scott Eulinger. Scott, this is remarkable. This operation, the CSAR that is going to go down in the history books and be studied for years. But as I said, the CIA played a huge role. Walk us through some of the details of how the CIA made this a success.
Well, one thing we're seeing is the product of increased CIA military cooperation, which started basically at 9/11 and has gotten better ever since. So initially, I believe the communications were monitored by the CIA, which then passed it on to the military, who were able to formulate the rescue plan. But then someone in the CIA, or perhaps someone else, because we don't know for certain, formulated the deception plan. Because with the weapons systems officer so close to Isfahan and hiding in an area that has a lot of Iranian activity, it was decided the deception operation would be necessary to convince at least some of the Iranians that the exfiltration was undergoing and that a ground convoy was moving toward the Gulf for a maritime exfiltration.
And Scott, we understand that some special techniques and special technology never before used by the CIA was employed here. Do you have any insight into what that might be?
Well, one thing I know for certain is the pilot communications have been greatly improved since the Vietnam War, and so what we have now are communications which are capable of burst technology. So that initial God is good transmission was sent out, but it was sent out in burst technology very quickly in a way that prevents its interception or its direction finding, which is very important. So that's a marked improvement over what has existed before. And that allowed the forces to kind of marshal, understand the pilot was in a certain area, and then later on, the pilot was able to transmit a transmission of greater duration, which provided the necessary information for the rescue.
And the CIA technology communicating with the downed airmen, you heard President Trump talk about in one of his social media posts that the airman was never alone. We were always there with him. And it seems to me that that was made possible because of the CIA's technology.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly the Reapers were also sent in the area, so I think fairly soon after the weapons systems officer was hiding, he could hear that there were friendly aircraft or drones overhead, and plus the burst technology of his communication system works both ways. So he would probably have received an assurance that help was on the way to sustain his morale.
Hey Scott, just in the few seconds we've got left, I've got to ask you, as someone as experienced as you with your work with the CIA, from the CIA deception plan to the technology employed to the size and daring mission of this rescue, have you ever seen anything like this?
No, certainly not. This is far and away perhaps the greatest CSAR mission I've ever
First
heard of.
one died.
The coordination of so many elements of the U.S. military, whether it's Special Forces, the Air Force, or even the CIA, means that we have the ability to do things that basically no other country on the planet has the capability.
You're spot on. I've been saying it's a CSAR for the history books that will be studied for a long time. Scott Ulinger, thank you very much for taking time.
So right now, new details about the intel used to find the U.S. colonel missing for more than 36 hours behind enemy lines in Iran. First, CIA spread inside Iran this information that he was already been rescued. At the same time, they pointed his location inside a mountain range for the search team. Our next guest ran intel operations for NYPD against Iranian terrorism, retired NYPD inspector, also attorney, Fox News contributor Paul Morrow. Paul, talk about the agency. Johnny Ratcliffe deserves a lot of credit in the CIA. That means that they had human intel on the ground for this to happen.
Yeah, the key to understand about intelligence is that it's not as glamorous as people think. It's not the movies. You got to collect, and a lot of it sometimes you're never going to use. The key is when you need it, it has to be there. So let's go to the Maduro case, for instance, by the way. So when it came time that they wanted to run that operation, the agency was able to confirm where he was going to be, where his wife was going to be. So in such a pinpointed way, they got him as they were running to a safe room. Without a scratch, everybody comes out without a scratch. They got them as they were fleeing. That's how detailed the messaging was. And that's how synchronized the operation was. Because in real time, they're talking to the IS guy, the helicopters, special ops guys that are coming in. That takes tremendous coordination. But it has to be there when you need it. And this case in Iran was one of those situations where the bell rang, guys, what do you got? The president turns around, Hegseth turns around, they all talk to Ratcliffe, and they say, what do you got, director? Unfortunately, it was there.
So every country does disinformation. Now, some use it for the battle space, like we did in this case, and some of it, you get it from the Iranians every day, claiming victory, saying they're assassinating leaders, and they really aren't. Explain to us how a disinformation campaign actually works.
Yeah, see, and that's a good example of what I'm talking about, because if you're just tweeting things out, and this goes on right now relative to the Iran war, you see Iranian operatives and proxies putting stuff out that you can read right through.
Just lies.
They're just lies, it's laughable, blah, blah, blah. I go back all the way to the Iraq war, when you had Baghdad Bob coming out and saying, okay, well, we're hitting back and they're fleeing and everything else, meanwhile, our tanks are tracking our money again. You got to be able to do disinformation in a way that it passes the Eagle test. And that means, once again, you have to have people embedded in places that you need them. And you may never need them. But when the time comes, you need to be able to press that button to say, okay, what do we do now? And Ratcliffe's people, in this case, when the time came and they turned to him, he said, I can do this. I don't have to speak for the guy, but I'm just intuiting.
Right.
This is how it goes. I got this, I got this, I got this. This is what we can do. And there's no argument with the success. They had such disinformation going on. The Iranians didn't know where the pilot was in their own country, in their own terrain. But we did. What is that? Imagine it in reverse. Iran is trying to find some mountains of Montana or something, right? They wouldn't know where to start. That's what these guys pulled off.
So I guess the big question with the last 30 seconds that we got left is, what has changed? We continue to hear that we're using technology that we haven't used before, whether it's the agency or the military as well. Have we always had this and we just didn't use it? What's going on?
I mean, the biggest change in this area is obviously in the cyber world, because in the old days it was all a lot slower, and now you have to do it in the very active world using satellites and seeding this stuff. I gotta tell you, At the end of the day, one thing that anybody does intelligence knows, it comes down to people.
Right.
It does come down to you.
Leaders.
If you think that you can sit in a cubicle someplace and get everything you need to be done, that's not how it's going to go. You need people in country, in dangerous areas, Americans working on our behalf that you'll never hear about. You'll never hear their names. They're doing this kind of thing. They're running the sources so that, again, when you need it, they say, my source is good. This is what he's telling me. And look, you're sitting as a boss. You turn around to your person, he was detectives, family's going to be his agents. You got to say, listen, we're going. There are lives depending on what you're telling us. Is your source good? And you have to believe that agent when he says, my source is good, we can move.
We don't hear about these people. They don't write books. They don't do interviews.
That's right.
We don't hear the good or the bad that they do. I'm sorry, if we keep them or if we lose them in battle. So great job to them. Thanks, Paul. You can catch Paul Morrow, watch the weekly rap sheet on Fox Nation and catch new episodes every Friday.
I'm Steve Gusian. I'm Brian Kilby.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Like now?
He was out there for 36 hours, escaping invasion, putting into effect what he learned at SEER school. And then at the same time, the CIA is tracking Iranian security forces, their movements, their efforts to find and fix the location of our airmen. And then at the same time, running this deception operation, an extraordinary operation. I've heard it referred to as looking for a needle in a haystack. I think it's more like a needle in a stack of needles. Extraordinarily difficult.
The U.S. retrieves a weapons system officer from deep inside Iran after his F-15 Strike Eagle was shot down early Friday. President Trump hailing it as one of the most daring search and rescue operations in U.S. history. A remarkably complex mission involving an elite special operations unit and an elaborate CIA diversionary plot. Here to break it down, former U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander Tom Sauer. Tom, it is a joyful Easter Sunday for that the family of that colonel who is now safe and really all Americans. It's an extraordinary move to be able to pull this off.
What's the usual price?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me. And yes, Christ is risen. Also, we got a little bit of a Easter miracle ourselves early this morning. And to give you an idea about this, is that when a plane is shot down like this, the words essentially pause, and then all efforts, this is a central command headquarters, this is at the Pentagon, the White House, everything becomes laser focused on recovering those airmen, and that one particular Rizzo, who was missing for 24 or 48 hours, and the guys doing it is like, yes, the Navy SEALs get an awful lot of attention these days, but one other component of this is the Air Force pararescue, and I had the real pleasure of working with those guys for a couple of years while we were attached to a similar special operations unit based out of the Pacific. To give you an idea of these guys, there's fewer than 300 active duty pararescuemen. Right there, they're a very, very small organization, and they've got the highest attrition rate anywhere in the military. We're talking 90% attrition. And so,
quick one, because my dad got to use the bathroom.
Combat medics in the world, they're the core of what's called the Guardian Weapons System, right? Which is the Air Force's, it's a non-aircraft-based, human-based weapons system dedicated solely to combat search and rescue. They integrate with the helicopters, the C-130s, the AC-130s, and then we obviously know there are A-10s involved on scene to basically destroy anyone and anything that is a threat to our down airmen or to our PJs. And obviously the CIA, hats off to them, they did an amazing job. And so the war was just paused once that air crew and those guys went down. Everything focused on that. So it's exactly what they're trained to do. It was their Super Bowl. I'm a little jealous, to be honest, because it sounds so exciting. And just love the opportunity to be able to gas those guys up because they don't always get as enough credit as they should sometimes. So, and their big motto they talk about all the time is these things we do that others may live. They're absolute heroes, and I'm insanely jealous of those guys right now. And so I'm really proud to have worked with them.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say 90% attrition rate, you're talking about the fact that 90% of the people who apply to become one of those rescue officers, they don't make it.
That's correct. Yeah, that sounds like 90%. And I went through dive school with those guys, all that stuff. It's insane.
Brigadier General John Tykert says it is those combat search and rescue folks who are the real heroes of the story. Listen.
You know, fighter pilots have heroes too, and they're the personnel that do combat search and rescue. And on our worst day, on their worst day this weekend, they came through in spades with a daring mission that got back both the pilot and the weapons systems officer.
I mean, I know after the pilot was rescued fairly early on, and the weapons systems officer, the Wizzo, as you put it, was not located, and you know the hours dragged on. It was looking a little bleak, at least to me.
Yeah, I picked up where it left off.
He put himself in a position to be rescued, and the crew went in and got him.
Stay there.
Absolutely right. And the thing is, this is one of those things that we always talk about, that, you know, when it comes to situations like this, you very rarely do people, you know, rise to the occasion. You sink down to your lowest level of training, right? And so the thing is, though, is that like these guys were trained so well. You know, you probably heard before that they all went through, you know, SEER school, you know, survival, evasion, resistance, and evacuation. I think I might not remember. Yeah, escape. Thank you. And so then, you know, but these guys went through all this training, and this is something that Air Force Pararescue, all of our special operations guys work so hard and train to do all the time. This is what they're absolutely built for. So, I mean, they're so incredibly impressive guys, and I love serving with them.
Yeah. It is ironic that a disaster in the Iranian desert 46 years ago is what led to the formation of the rescue crews who were so successful in these two rescues. Listen to Brent Sadler here.
The last time the U.S. military tried something like this was almost 26 years ago in Operation Eagle Claw to rescue over 50 American hostages that had been held for over 400 days at the time in April of 1980, again in Iran. But that ended in disaster. It resulted in a lot of inward introspection of the military, the creation of Special Forces Command, as well as what we have today, the joint service that we appreciate, and the integrated military service operations that we benefit from. And certainly this mission is I think, a reflection of that.
Final thoughts, Tom.
I think he just.
Hey, my buddy Brent is absolutely correct, right? I mean, that is why we have the Joint Special Operations Command, and that is, you know, the 3-star command that is over, you know, these other very tier 1 units that, you know, we don't officially acknowledge their existence of. That's what created it. It was a massive failure that happened during the Carter administration, and we just didn't have the right people, the integration, and a lot of the technology. And now, one thing I learned when I got involved in all of this, when I got all the read-ins and everything, is wow, there is a very impressive large organization that is well-manned and well-funded, and they are some of the very best that our country has to offer.
And we are grateful for their work and their service. Former Navy Lieutenant Commander Tom Sauer. Tom, thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
That's you.
Right, back with the Fox News alert on the second U.S. airman that was rescued after his F-15E crashed in Iran. And we are learning about the CIA deception campaign used to get him out of the country. The agency had sources spread leaks through Iran that U.S. forces had already located the missing airman and were moving him out of the country. These rumors confused the Iranian searchers and gave the CIA time to use specialized techniques to find him. The CIA picked up a beacon signal, which they were initially concerned was an Iranian trap. But once they determined it was not, they were able to locate and rescue that airman back to safety. Founder of Grable Rescue, Brian Stern, joins me now. Brian, you know, it is one thing for us to talk about something like this, entirely different to live it out, which you have multiple times. So given the details of what we know so far, and many of them are fascinating, what stands out to you about this rescue mission?
The big thing with this mission is the integration of the joint force, the conventional military, the special operations, our U.S. Special Operations Forces, and also the intelligence community, all operating in harmony, and foreign partners. Certainly, the Israelis have a part to play here as well. The deception piece of this operation, I think it's super cool that it's out there at Grable when we do operations like this. Maria Corina Machado is one. Kirilo Alexandrov from Russia is another one. Deception against the enemy is always a central tenet to doing these operations because they are very dangerous. They are the resources of the enemy tend to be vast, and we got to remember it's their terrain. So doing all kinds of tricks to get them out of the way so that we can have a better rescue and a better extraction is always key.
Is there a moment, Brian, during an operation like this that is considered the riskiest part?
I get asked this question all the time. My blood pressure doesn't go down until the helicopters land safely and we're done. Very often, when these operations happen, when we do an operation like this and we get our objective, on the radio we say jackpot. You say jackpot, jackpot, jackpot. And very often in the command center, when that happens, everyone starts high-fiving each other because that means that you got the target, you got the objective, you got the isolated person.
He's gonna take a little bathroom break. He's gotta use the bathroom, little bathroom break.
If I'm calling jackpot on the radio, that means that my team and I are still behind enemy lines. We just happen to now have our package with us. Getting home is often the harder part. The exfil tends to be harder because we've gone loud. Things have gotten more complicated and less complicated. So my blood pressure always spikes as soon as we call jackpot. A minute to that is because I know everyone's very excited and not paying attention. We gotta get the team back on track and remind them of the home.
Right, my blood pressure is spiking just listening to what that would be like, and it does sound like the back half of the mission could be even more complicated than the beginning part. Because you're right, your identity is revealed, and the fact that you're shooting down and there's a helicopter and all of that. And I want to hear the colonel himself because he climbed 7,000
What's up, man? That
feet
one person
up a
watching, let
ridge
me
and
know who it is.
for nearly 48
Where you
hours.
at?
And he used his survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training to evade capture. So it sounds like he also had a big hand in rescuing himself and following this training.
Yeah, so this is, I think, also central to this operation, and an important point. And I'll give you an example. My team and I have conducted 809 missions in just over 4 years. In terms of 8,800 people, give or take. Every single one of them have to play an active role in their safety and their survival. It's extremely important. In this case, you have a full bird Air Force colonel, who is very well trained, extremely seasoned. He's been through multiple certifications and recertifications for SEER school, which we all go to. There's a bunch of different ones of them. There's refresher training, all that good stuff. This is a seasoned pilot who is trained for exactly, or seasoned air crew.
I had this on to the point where Jesse said it was cold.
The challenge in this particular case is,
Oh,
as seasoned as he is, he's still a full bird colonel. What does that mean? He's probably in his later years. He got gray hair.
I was able to put him back and everything.
When you simply think about flight crew, we think about Top Gun and Maverick. And this is a full bird colonel. His next rank is general. So he's probably a little senior when the pictures come out. I'm sure that they will. It'll be kind of funny because you're gonna see someone with a little senior. That's a deep nine.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put some titanium.
Just because we're running a little bit tight, but I do want to get to this because one aircraft involved in this distraction was left behind after reportedly getting stuck in the mud, and then they destroyed it. Although that aircraft is still behind enemy lines, is that something that we should worry about?
I don't think so. The boys did what's called a bed day. They blew it in place. The C-130 got stuck in the sand. This has happened before, and again, it speaks to the remarkable planning from a special operations perspective and an air perspective. The idea that a plane can get stuck in the sand, in the middle, behind it, hundreds of miles behind enemy lines, and still we didn't lose anybody, and still the equipment was secured, and still everything worked out. We're the only military in the world that can lose an aircraft, a big aircraft, the exfil aircraft, in the middle of an operation and still not skip a beat and succeed in win.
Yeah, and it really is remarkable, Brian. And then more aircraft had to come in to bring those service members home who were on the originally on the aircraft that was eventually destroyed. President Trump's been holding a news conference with military later today after pulling off this most daring rescue that certainly the details sound like something out of a movie. Brian, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this. You're the absolute perfect person to break all this down. We appreciate your time this morning.
Welcoming everyone.
Hey, could you put food in here? No. Okay. But my feet. I don't want to be in your camera either. Fuck. You're a channel, bro. I don't want to be in it. Fuck. I don't want to be in that bitch. Shut up. You're next on the chair anyway. That doesn't mean I'm gonna be on your fucking camera. Well, you have somebody watching. It's you.
So Chad,
I actually think that is a reasonable misunderstanding, but neither us nor the Israelis said that that was going to be part of the ceasefire.
The Trump administration, including J.D. Vance, have completely lied to the American people. The 2-week ceasefire with Iran included a stop to Israeli aggression and Israel's assault on Lebanon. But Netanyahu wanted to continue carpet bombing Lebanon, and so as a result, he jeopardized the 2-week ceasefire by doing just that. Then you have J.D. Vance and the Trump administration coming out to pretend as though the ceasefire did not cover Lebanon at all, and that's just not true. Now, before we get to the details on this and more, Jake, your 2 cents.
yeah, so look, this war has been confusing, guys, and especially this last part, because it's not surprising that American government would be lying. It would be shocking if the Israeli government weren't lying. And it's not like you can trust an Iranian government perfectly either. But normally, I thought in previous lifetime was that you could somewhat trust some of American media. Now, the American media just does American propaganda. And so you can't get any real news from them. So that's like, is Lebanon part of the deal? Absolutely, as you're about to see, right? But beyond that, it's really hard to get straight news out of anyone here. So follow along with us as Anna gives you the facts, and together we'll sort out what's actually happening in this.
So while Trump and Vance have been insisting that the 2-week ceasefire does not have anything to do with the assault on Lebanon, the New York Times, believe it or not, asserts that that's not true. And on top of that, to explain what's going on here, we kind of need to go back to Tuesday, April 7th, because at 12:17 p.m., the Prime Minister of Pakistan posted the following: diplomatic efforts for peaceful settlement of the ongoing war in the Middle East are progressing steadily, strongly, and powerfully, with the potential to lead to substantive results in near future. To allow diplomacy to run its course, I earnestly request Trump to extend the deadline for 2 weeks. Pakistan, in all sincerity, requests the Iranian brothers to open the Strait of Hormuz for a corresponding period of 2 weeks as a goodwill gesture. We also urge all warring parties to observe a ceasefire everywhere for 2 weeks to allow diplomacy to achieve conclusive termination of war. Okay, you get the point. Then, hours later at 3:32 p.m., Trump announced the ceasefire. So this is what he wrote on Truth Social, based on conversations with Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif of Pakistan and Field Marshal Hassan Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran, and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. Now, here's the very relevant part. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a
We'll try to run
workable
the high
basis
three.
on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. Okay, great. Then a little over an hour later, Pakistan's prime minister posted the following. With the greatest humility, I am pleased to announce that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the U.S., along with their allies, have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, effective immediately. Pretty freaking clear. Pretty freaking clear. Okay. So Pakistan's prime minister made not one, but 2 separate references to Lebanon's inclusion in the ceasefire agreement. And that is important because today, the New York Times reported that when Prime Minister Sharif posted that initial statement, the White House had already seen and signed off on it before Sharif posted it, according to a person briefed on the communication. A White House official denied that Trump wrote the statement, as some observers speculated on Truth Social when Sharif initially posted the statement with the header draft Pakistan's PM message on X. But the administration did take part in crafting that statement, meaning our government agreed with the notion that the assault on Lebanon would stop and it would be included in the 2-week ceasefire. But now the administration is lying to us. The Times' reporting indicates that the
What's
Trump
up, gang?
administration again was coordinating the ceasefire agreement with Pakistan. And as we have pointed out, Pakistan was very clear. Lebanon was part of the ceasefire, and now Iran is refusing to back down. In fact, today, the president of Iran wrote the following. The repeated aggression by the Zionist entity against Lebanon is a flagrant violation of the initial ceasefire agreement and a dangerous indicator of deceit and lack of commitment to potential accords. The continuation of these aggressions will render negotiations meaningless. Our hands will remain on the trigger, and Iran will never abandon its Lebanese brothers and sisters. And so the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament wrote something very similar. Lebanon and the entire resistance axis as Iran's allies form an inseparable part of the ceasefire. PM Shahbaz Sharif publicly and clearly stressed that the Lebanon issue, there's no room for denial and backtracking. Ceasefire violations carry explicit costs and strong responses. Extinguish the fire immediately.
Back from break.
Israel is the biggest obstacle, not just to peace in the Middle East, to world peace. Israel is out of control and belligerent and is carrying out war crimes left and right, invading its neighbors, thanks to us, because we embolden them. We fund them, we arm them, and we are now complicit in their war crimes. We are part of their war crimes. And that's not fair to the American people because we don't want this.
Yeah.
James.
So I think that the reason that Donald Trump did the threat of complete annihilation and why he's basically capitulating to Iran now is the same reason, which is that we're out of options. We have no leverage left because we're running low on defensive missiles. And if we obliterate Iran's energy facilities, they will obliterate the Gulf energy facilities. Oil will skyrocket, the stock market will crash. So we have no leverage. So that's why Trump desperately was like, oh yeah, the only leverage I have is total annihilation, so I might use that. But it was a sad, pathetic bluff. So when that didn't work, he backed out and was like, okay, we'll agree to your 10-point plan. When he first said that, I couldn't believe it. Like, wait, the 10-point plan has us taking all the bases out, giving reparations to Iran, etc. So, but again, in the statements, super clear that not attacking Lebanon was part of it, right? Even if the other 2 things that I just mentioned aren't. So basically, Trump is giving in and saying, yeah, we're not going to get your uranium. And we might even have to pay a toll to Strait of Hormuz because we basically lost, right? Mm-hmm. So now, that humiliating defeat brought to you by our special ally, Israel. But I'm going to go a little further here, and I'm sure that the good folks in the establishment will find this controversial. But I think that Iran should get credit for defending Lebanon.
100%. Are you kidding me? 100%. 100%. And also the Palestinians.
Yes, that's what I was going to get to as well. So I know that in American media, you have to call all Muslims terrorists, and you have to denounce Palestinians and Lebanese and Persians, and you have to say they're always the bad guys. But no, Israel committed the genocide in Gaza, and the only one who was trying to help the Palestinians were the Iranians. Israel is committing ethnic cleansing in southern Lebanon right now, and the only one trying to help them are the Iranians. And everyone else sitting there and standing by as you see genocide after genocide, well, you know, the old quotes about the Holocaust still remain in effect today. You know, if you did nothing, then how complicit are you? So the one country that gets to say that they did something about Israel's genocide was Iran. And by the way, if you don't know, they've been putting out messages to the rest of the Muslim world, shaming them.
Yeah.
Hey, you left our fellow brothers and sisters to die and get slaughtered by Israel? You cowards. And it turns out when Iran fought back, not only did they fight back for Iran, but they're now fighting back for Lebanon. Like, I'm not naive, I get it. They have proxies there and they have political interest there. That's definitely also true. But the effect of what they're doing is fighting back to protect the Lebanese, which no one else on earth is doing. And for me, I think that they deserve credit for that.
I totally agree with you.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true. But it does keep you updated on our live shows.
This U.S. soldier was part of a crew of about 60 troops stationed at the installation, tasked with managing the movement of equipment, munitions, and personnel across the Middle East. We are putting you in shadow, but there's still a risk for you speaking that you could be identified. Why do you want to take that chance?
U.S. soldiers who survived a March 1st Iranian attack against them while they were in Kuwait are blowing the whistle on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the lies he's been telling the American people in very
He's asking for spritz.
in
This guy's a
regard
picky
to how
motherfucker.
this war is
He wants the
going.
spritz.
In fact, they feel that Pete Hegseth has put them in harm's way and did not prepare them appropriately for this war. Before we get to the details and what they're saying, Jake, your 2 cents.
Yeah, so first of all, there's a fact in this story that lets you know definitively who's telling the truth and who isn't. And secondly, I want to talk about why Hegseth chose not to defend these soldiers. So Anna, give us the facts.
Show you one thing, I'll show you
during
again.
his March 2nd press conference, this attack happened on March 1st. The next day, Pete Hegseth holds a press conference, and he described the Iranian drone attack as a so-called squirter that allegedly squirted the, I'm sorry, it's a serious story, I apologize, squirted through a fortified unit inside Kuwait. Let's watch.
As it pertains to the U.S. casualties, that particular incident was, you know, you have air defenses and the lot's coming in and you hit most of it, and we absolutely do. We have incredible air defenders. Every once in a while you might have one, unfortunately we call it a squirter that makes its way through, and in that particular case, it happened to hit a tactical operations center that was fortified. But these are powerful weapons.
But it turns out that one of the soldiers who was there when this attack happened and luckily survived says otherwise. Okay, so here's the quote that he gave to CBS. Painting a picture that one squeaked through is a falsehood. I want people to know the unit was unprepared to provide any defense for itself. It was not a fortified position. In fact, why don't you hear a little more of the truth in this next clip?
What fortifications existed there? I mean, we put it in the non-category from a drone defense capability.
No, there were no fortifications.
None.
What you're describing can be very painful for a lot of the families of the fallen heroes, a lot of the families of the injured.
I'm very sad for their loss, and it's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. We moved closer to Iran, to a deeply unsafe area that was a known target.
So what was the reason that you were told for why you needed to be there?
I don't think there was a good reason ever articulated.
The attack was Iran's deadliest strike against the U.S. in 5 weeks of war, killing 6 American soldiers and injuring dozens more.
Were these deaths preventable?
In my opinion, absolutely yes.
Now, again, this was in Kuwait. There was another attack against our military in Kuwait that was friendly fire by the Kuwaitis. That's separate. That was when our jets were shot down by the Kuwaitis. This is an entirely separate incident that took place in Kuwait and ended up killing 6 of our service members. And when it comes to fortification, you have to consider what the threats used to be thought of in the Middle East, right? Things like suicide bombers. But warfare has changed since then. And so when we're talking about a drone strike from up above, these buildings need to be fortified in a completely different way. CBS reports that the hours before the attack, by the way, missile alarms had indicated to a crew of about 60 troops to basically take cover in like a cement bunker. However, and very sadly, around 9:15 a.m., an all-clear alert sounded, and officers returned to their desks in this like wood and tin workspace, meaning that it wasn't fortified, and it's about the width of 3 trailers. So about 30 minutes later, everything shook, one soldier told CBS News. And it's something like what you see in the movies. Your ears are ringing, everything's fuzzy, your vision is blurry, you're dizzy, there's dust and smoke everywhere. Now, there's been some other reporting to kind of reinforce the notion that Pete Hegseth is, just not qualified for the job he's doing, and he is lying to the American people. But before we get to that, Jake, your 2 cents, or actually your thoughts.
Yeah, so there's a difference between optics and substance, and this is where the rubber hits the road. So Trump picked based on optics. So is he good on TV? So Hegseth goes out there and says, "Yeah, we're so masculine, and I can do push-ups, and I don't want anybody with beaters or pot belly." And yeah, but brother, that's all window dressing. When we're going to war, your window dressing isn't going to help anyone. You need to actually be prepared and experienced and know where to put your troops. Otherwise, you're going to get them killed. And you did here. So, how do you know who's telling the truth? Well, number one, was it tin and wood in the area that they were staying at? That was the walls of the compounds? Yes. Number two, were they protected from the air? No. Now, how do we know that? The drone easily landed and blew up. And over 6 people died, over 20 terribly injured. And so there's no question that Hegseth is lying when he said it was, quote, fortified, right? And the troops are very patriotic, and they keep talking about how, these folks died as heroes, etc. But they were sent on a fool's errand by a guy who has no idea what he's doing. And Anna, why were they not fortified? Why was there no protection and no interceptor missiles in that base? Because we were obsessed with protecting Israel. Mm-hmm. So we were spending almost all of our time, energy, and resources protecting a different country instead of our troops. And it's unconscionable.
And not only that, Jane, I'm sorry, but why was Pete Hegseth chosen, nominated, appointed to be defense secretary when his only experience, he was in the military, I don't really care. He has a history of abusive behavior, alcoholism, and was like a weekend anchor at Fox. But Trump likes the way he looks, so he thinks he's qualified to be defense secretary, which is insane. He is not capable of fulfilling this role, in a way that would protect our troops and make smart decisions.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell? Why am I paying so much for AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch. TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
And it turns out that he has made all sorts of ridiculous, boastful assertions that aren't based in reality at all. So U.S. officials and analysts argue that Hegseth is actually doing damage to the military by making these untrue claims to the public, which include that the U.S. has control over the Iranian skies. Does it look like the U.S. has control over Iranian skies? Or that the airspace over Iran is uncontested? Okay. So making matters worse, he's not being honest with Trump. Okay, so that was something that was percolating in the media just last week. Susie Wiles was basically telling people in Trump's cabinet, like, yo, you guys need to be a little more honest with Trump about how this war is going. And one administration official told the Washington Post that Pete is not speaking truth to the president. As a result, the president is out there repeating misleading information. Though Hegseth has claimed for weeks that Iran has no air defenses and could do nothing about U.S. air incursions, Trump acknowledged during his White House news conference Monday that a shoulder-fired, heat-seeking missile downed an F-15 that left 2 U.S. airmen temporarily stranded deep inside Iranian territory. Quote, he got lucky. It was a lucky hit, Trump said. Now, we covered that so-called rescue mission on the show. I genuinely think that considering how deep within Iran our service members were, considering that they were in a very mountainous region of Iran, and considering the insane number of aircraft and military assets that were in the area at the time, they weren't there for a rescue mission. I think they were there to try to get the so-called enriched uranium, and that special operation failed. That is my speculation, because things don't add up. And to be quite honest with you guys, I don't trust anything that's coming out of the Trump administration. They've already been caught in so many lies. Iran also shot down an A-10 attack plane last Friday. Luckily, the pilot survived and made it back to safety. Hegseth's analysis also contradicts what General Dan Kane, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has been saying. He does not believe that the U.S. military can use Iranian airspace without fear of attack. So it is terrifying that our Secretary of Defense is just engaging in magical thinking and lying not just to the public, but to the President of the United States about what is currently going on. That puts our service members in harm's way.
Yeah. So when Pete Hegseth says we have uncontested control of Iranian airspace, well, the facts speak for themselves. So not only was that F-15 knocked down, but another plane was hit as well. Luckily, they got to safety before the pilot ejected.
All right, that's the end of this haircut.
And then the operation that I was talking about, we lost at least 2 C-130s and 2 helicopters. And they say it's because they landed in a place they couldn't take off from again. Maybe, but it's also possible that, yeah, they were going for the enriched uranium and they got shot down. So, I mean, we've lost at least 6.
Let me know in the comments what y'all think, man. Is it blurry?
Within the last
I know if my man has a blurry fade, or
so
go back to the shop, or
the Iranians still have capabilities.
Let us
and
know.
Hegseth is lying through his teeth. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets its wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.
There was speculation on Tuesday night that Donald Trump was perhaps going to announce an end to the war. That is unlikely. We're finishing the job, and I think within maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days longer to do the job. This is the first time the president has set a 2-week deadline.